Okay, let me pull the agenda up here before we get started. Just hang on 1 second. Okay, this is a meeting of the Holiday Island City Planning Commission. It's the 25th of January, 2022 at 1 o'clock. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Let's stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Lynn distributed the agenda. Do I have a
roll call, sir?
Roll call.
Elwood. Graves.
He's on his way. Here.
Mills.
Here.
Pittman. Here. Dumas here. 4 present, sir.
Well, I'm here.
Okay, 5 are present and 6. You started the meeting. We knew you were here.
All right, so I'll declare a quorum. Do we have any discussion on the agenda?
Make a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
We have a motion by Ken. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Lynn seconded it. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda is approved. We have minutes distributed from the regular meeting from January 11th. Any, Linda already submitted her.
It was a couple of changes of the personal pronoun I to Dumas in the last couple of pages.
With those changes, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move we approve the minutes.
Linda made the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Jerry seconded it. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. We have no committee reports, no new business. So we'll go back to old business, continued discussion on proposed zoning regulations. And this is going to be just for the audience, our huge audience here. This is just going to be a kind of a free-flowing discussion on developing our zoning regulations. We've been doing this for, we've had several meetings already to discuss this. So we're going to continue that process today, and I'm going to turn it over to Lynn.
In the document that was distributed and is available online, it's noted that this is a version that has been reconfigured in a typical municipal code layout. So all the numbers for the sections have been changed. The order of the text is the same as it was if you were looking at previous copies. So the first 5 pages that I have here, just a reference, cross-reference, if you will, a table of contents. So the real content begins on page 5. Scrolling down to that. On page 5, then we need to go immediately, I guess, to page 10 is the first place I have edits since the last version. Page 10.
Is that the one about condominiums?
Yes, a definition for condominium.
They look good to me.
And the research that's been done, it has to do with, like Dan had said in the previous meetings, it's hard to distinguish sometimes condominium from townhomes. And I think we've got it pretty well lined out here in this section. Basically, it's the ownership usually includes a non-exclusive interest in the community property, but the individual units, I believe, are owned separately.
Yeah.
In a condominium.
This is something that, you know, we're going to have to get straightened out somehow in Holiday Island here as to what's called what. And even I'm not 100% clear in my mind yet how this ties into zoning ordinances, because, you know, the difference between condominiums and townhouses is a a legal difference in ownership, types of ownership, not in types of structures. And so, does the zoning ordinance control the type of ownership or the type of structure? And, you know, it ties into use, but, or maybe we don't care about ownership because all we care about is use and, type of structure. So,
Well, I had a condo, 3 years, and it was, we had a condo association, that, private owners of each unit. But any structural, changes to the outside or the roof line or decks built had to be, by the entire, board of the association. So in that regard, I think that would involve zoning, because you wouldn't want to, we're just not, if all we're concerned about is ownership, an owner could do something, build something onto the condominium that wouldn't meet the specifications or whatever.
to me, it needs to be clear whether it is a townhouse or a condominium. And I can say this from personal experience. When we bought our townhouse in Wedgwood, they're called Wedgwood townhouses. They were advertised as townhouses, they were listed and sold as townhouses. And my concept of townhouse was that we were buying that unit and the land that it sat on. Because that, if you look up legal description for townhouses, that's what it says. And when we,
I'm sorry.
when we got to the point of trying to close, the title company was confused, the real estate agent was confused, and the person that was able to explain it to us just happened to be the insurance agent that carried the insurance for the whole complex. And my first reaction was, I was a little PO'd.
So it was set up where you carried insurance from studs in?
Yes.
Okay.
We ended up buying insurance basically for the sheetrock, anything hanging on the walls, and our personal property. I was a little bit PO'd at first because that's not what I thought I was buying.
Well, no, because that would be a townhouse, I would think, by the definition.
A townhouse, you own the land that it's sitting on.
Well, I know, but the common structure of the roof and studs out is,
Condominium.
the condominium.
Right.
Well, condominiums don't, the term condominium doesn't refer to the type of structure. Because you can have vertical condominiums, you can have horizontal condominiums, you can have any kind of condominium. It's a legal definition of your type of ownership. And the main difference between condo and townhouse is that in a condo, you don't own the land that your property is sitting on. You own that in partnership with all the other condo owners.
So you don't get your own property tax bill?
Yes, you do,
Oh, you do?
but it's for
The space inside.
it's for the inside. Well, I tell you the truth, I was, you know, we ended up selling it, and I'm still kind of ignorant as to how that all works from a taxing standpoint.
Because if it's a shared lot, I would think you would get a bill from the association.
I don't think the condo owners association, I don't think any condo owners association in Holiday Island here gets a tax bill.
No,
I
that's
think
not,
that's wrong.
that is wrong. I got one every year, 4 or 3 years.
As a condo owner, but not the association itself.
No, the association did not do it.
Right. So in the county's mind, they're dividing up the common property in the tax bill and billing the property owners, the condo owners directly. But that's probably not correct.
I can't believe
So
I
did you
forgot
see
that.
in Oak Point where each one was listed separately in the county tax records? Well, then they're each.
Yeah,
tax bill.
and in fact, it's even assessed as buildings and land,
Okay.
when it's clearly shown on the plot map on Data Scout that they don't own the common land. And when you click on the common land in Data Scout, it says no information found. Yeah, exactly.
And the district charges each
Wes,
property owner,
you gotta slam the door a little harder.
Okay. Oh, thank you.
Okay.
each of the condo owners got
That's
a
something.
assessment.
I could.
Say it again.
As a condo owner, we also
Yeah.
assess the district.
I said assesses condo owners, as an R1. So they get the same assessment bill as any house, you know, in that
So
house.
how are we gonna call them? We're gonna call them condos, or we're gonna call them county?
I think we're gonna have them two separate. We're gonna, in the uses section, we'll determine condominiums and townhomes where they can be built, where they can be used.
I think this is gonna be a long and painful process. Because I think what we need to do is start with the legal description. And if the legal description says it's a condo,
It's a condo.
then, and if it's plotted as a condo,
Per the definition.
then we should zone it as a condo. And help the district and the county and everybody else get their records corrected.
Makes sense.
But if it's plotted as a townhouse, which some of them are, like down on Blue Water, there are some where it's a fourplex, but each unit has a complete, from front to back of the lot line. There's no common, area that's not, part of one of the units. So in those particular cases, I would imagine if we went and knocked on their door and asked them, they would say, no, we don't have a condo owners association, or we don't have a townhouse association. We're all individually responsible for our own exterior maintenance. We all cut our own grass and stuff like that. And in which case, they should be classified as townhouses.
So does this, does that logic apply to duplexes where some are on the same lot and some are on two separate lots?
Here again, I think it comes down to ownership. If it's a duplex, whether it's on one lot or two lots, it should be one owner. If it's two owners, then
Well, you
in
could
my
have-
mind, it's not a duplex,
You
it's
could
a
have one
two-unit
owner.
townhouse.
You could have one owner owning both sides and renting one side.
Here again, it depends on how it's plotted. If it's
That's what I'm
plotted as
saying.
two units,
I think it
divided by
depends
a
on how
common
it's
wall, then it's a two-unit townhouse, not a two-unit apartment building. And we have, again, down on Blue Water, there's right next to one that's called townhouses, there's one that's called an apartment building. It's zone C1, but it has 4 individual owners, just like a townhouse.
Well, and those appear as separate listings in the county tax record.
Yes.
Okay.
And we don't have duplex defined. We need to have a definition.
Yes, I thought it was in here.
Well, it's gone now.
I swore
thought it was in there also, but between
Is it
drive-in and
used?
dwelling, duplex isn't there.
Okay, that's an add.
So I need to add a duplex definition.
Oh, there's two kinds of duplexes, which one's it? Which one's a duplex?
Well, I'm gonna look up the legal definition, but I assume it's one building
There's a
that's
whole
split
bunch of them
in two.
out here that there's a duplex on
Not my
one
lot.
lot.
Yeah, and that's fine.
Some of them may be split.
Yeah.
Right, then they'd be
It's
a
a duplex
townhome.
on one lot with one
By
owner,
definition, it'd be a
there's
townhome.
nothing wrong with that.
Well, is it a duplex or
Building.
is it an apartment house?
If it's on one lot, it's
Townhome.
with one owner, it's a duplex.
And if it's
Two or more.
two owners
Okay.
and two lots, and then it's a
Then
townhouse.
it's a townhouse, a two-unit townhouse.
So the definition
Or
of
it
town,
could be a two-unit condo association if they have a common area that's owned by the condo owners association
on one lot,
on one,
one property around.
one property.
How does that work on the, insurance on a townhouse? If one of them, starts a fire like they did at, Table Rock and burns the whole place down, does your insurance pay for the reconstruction, or?
In Wetwood at least, I'm 99% sure the condo owners association had.
No,
insurance.
yeah, I guess I
Structure.
misstated. On a townhouse, complex, how would that work?
If your unit burns, I mean, you have insurance on your whole structure,
That's correct.
inside and out. So if your unit burns, then your insurance covers it. If the fire you started burns down your neighbor's townhouse, I guess it's between the insurance companies as to who pays for it.
Not quite, but, you sure you wanna go there? It gets a little complicated,
I don't know that I.
and it depends on what state you're in. The state laws vary from state to
Yeah.
state. If you pay, at least I know Oklahoma, I'm not sure Arkansas had to say this, in Oklahoma, the Supreme Court decided that if you pay a portion of the liability insurance for the condo association, then you can't be subrogated against, because general insurance laws, you cannot subrogate against your own insurer. But other states have taken a different view of that. I'm not really sure, I didn't handle that kind of claim, not really sure what Arkansas does. Most states would say that if I had a fire in my unit and it caused damage to your unit, then I'm responsible under Section 2 of my liability policy for that. But I'm not real sure, because I haven't handled this kind of claim in Arkansas, but I could look it up for us if we wanted to, but
Well,
I
I
don't know
think,
that we need to go there, do we?
I think we have a pretty good understanding now of what constitutes a townhouse versus a condominium versus an apartment building versus a duplex and things like that. And
Sure we do.
with that understanding, and they will all be defined in our definitions,
Definitions
Here.
are critical here.
yeah. Based on those definitions, we will determine what we think property needs to be classified as, how it needs to be zoned. And, you know, and it's gonna create some follow-up work, because, you know, in our mind, you're not gonna be able to have 4 structures on the same street that are all, for all practical purposes, identical, and each one zoned differently. You know, the use is identical, the structure is identical, the only thing that, you know, that theoretically different is the zoning. That doesn't work. And that, I'm editorializing now, but that's what happens when you don't have a planning commission. It's just been wild, wild west over the years. Whatever, you know, when somebody says, well, we didn't plot it because we didn't know what we were gonna use it for yet, that's, you know, red flag number 1, that there is no master plan, and you don't have any idea what's gonna go up across the street from you.
So the definition for townhome is at the top of page 17 or 16, depending on how it's numbered. It's 2 or more single or multi-story dwelling units attached to the side or sides. Each unit is located on an individually owned lot, has a separate outdoor entrance, and is designed to be occupied and owned by one family. Shared walls will establish property lines with no setback between the attached units. So that's how we have townhome defined right now. All right, any more discussion on townhome versus condominium? Okay, my next edit was on page 21. Page 21 is where the, in 14.06.01, the zoning districts are defined. Get my mouse to work. In going through my definitions and looking forward to drawing the map and how it might be, it occurred to me that there are some parts of Holiday Island inside its municipal boundaries that are federally controlled. So I thought it would be smart to have a category, a zone called government-F for federal stuff. So that if there's any question about how a property is zoned, we'll have it marked as federal. In that light, when I looked at the G-H that we'd already defined for Holiday Island for the city, I thought, oh, I don't want to have any confusion with HICID, so I changed the H to a C to be city.
Okay.
That's the reason I did those 2 changes. Okay, just to make it a little cleaner. Page 23 is the next edit. And page 23 in 701, okay, in 14.701. Okay, this is where we have to do the work today. For illustrative reasons, I put in some red there some sizes of lots. So when we talk about lot sizes, it would be easy to reconcile in your mind how big they are.
That's really helpful, by the way.
Thank you. We had talked about R1s being quarter acre. So a quarter acre is 10,890 square feet. And so I started with that R1 defining the district is characterized by a single family residential development of lots not less than 10,000 square feet with a maximum density not exceeding 4 units per acre. That's the kind of language that I found in other codes. So we're saying basically you're only going to have 4 houses per acre and a minimum lot size is at least 10,000 square feet. So it kind of makes them quarter acre lots.
For R1.
For R1.
Have you done, have you taken a look-see as to whether or not there are areas in Holiday Island plotted with lots that are less than a quarter acre?
There are some that are like 0.2, 0.21, 0.23.
For example, the Keys lot is 10,147 square
I was
feet.
gonna say, mine is right on the ragged edge, because,
The Elwood lot is 9,977 square feet.
There you go.
what is that?
9,977.
Whose lot?
That's mine.
Oh,
The Graves lot is 15,985.
you can only be an R 1/2.
Our 3/4.
Mills is on 43,326 square feet.
Damn land bear.
Pittman is on 13,994. And Dumas is on 14,664. The lot sizes in Holiday Island are all over the map.
Yeah, and there you go, and so, but basically what we're setting that up for is where we plot
For future development.
a new acreage, or, you know, like
We'd like it to be at least.
one of the
a quarter
parcels.
acre.
If you plotted out one of the parcels, then you're saying for an R1, it has to be 10,000 feet.
That's what I put in here. The regulations I copied was 9,600, and I just thought, well, let's make it 10,000.
Well, I don't know,
For
you know,
discussion.
most developments, a lot of the developments, if they got flat ground, you know, they're 100 by 100. I know, you know, I lived in developments in kind of 100 by 100.
That'd be 10,000 square feet.
10,000. That's 0.2 though, isn't it? Not a quarter.
A little under.
Just a hair under.
Hair under.
10,890 is a quarter acre. 11,000 square feet.
I mean, I don't know, this is guidance, right? I mean,
Yeah, we're setting the stake that if someone wants to subdivide a parcel or develop something new that's going to require our approval, we're saying it has to be at least 10,000 square
given
feet.
the terrain that we have here, gonna be hard to come up with square lots. But you gotta start someplace.
Well, a lot of us, some of us have lots that live on terrain that, you know, really couldn't build on part of the lot.
We're not gonna define, the dimensions of the lot, we're only gonna define
The number of
the square footage, but we may define the minimum street frontage.
I mean, all it is setting a standard for density, population density.
We're not gonna go back and
There's one lot on the island down there that I think people have tried to sell in the past, on the 9-hole golf course, that, I don't know, that, it comes to such a point on, I think it's a little cul-de-sac off of Fairway Drive, not Fair, Fairway. But anyway, it comes to such a point that I'm not sure you can even get a driveway into it.
Okay.
It's probably way below the standard.
Yeah, so I think that we should have a minimum frontage of 80 feet or something like that.
Is that fairly consistent with the places that you looked at?
Yeah, one was 9,600 square feet for R1s, and they're all about this range, from what I recall, for low density single family. They're all called something different, each one that I've read, but they're about that size. Okay, just then for moving on, I guess for conversation, in the R2, the medium density, because of the kinds of uses that I anticipate that we're going to put in those, I thought, well, 5,000 square feet might be a good place to start, and a density of 8 units per acre. So basically, it's twice the density. Houses would be closer together, or could be, or they would be smaller.
Now, how big a house could you build on that 5,000 square foot?
Well, the other parts in our regs say that you can't occupy more than 50% of the lot, so up to 2,500 square feet.
Including garage and porch. And
So it'd be up to 2,500 on a 5,000 square foot lot.
R2 is duplex,
1,700 square feet.
right?
Or the house I first bought was 1,040 square feet. It was a 2-bedroom.
I say R2 is a duplex, right?
Yes, it says that each unit, let's see, the purpose of the district is intended for 2-family or duplex residential uses. Each unit of each duplex on an individual lot. So what it says is if you're gonna build a duplex,
It's a townhouse.
and it might be a townhouse, yeah, rather than a duplex.
Okay, but
It would have to be a townhouse by definition.
But they're probably, 2-bedroom, 2-bath units. You gotta figure.
If we're saying the duplex is on an individual lot, it's not, well, it has to do with the style of construction, but by definition, that makes it a townhouse, townhome.
Yeah,
well, I don't know, I think that might be what you wanna do, because a duplex built on one lot, causes you all kinds of problems. With the assessments, I think.
why? There's lots of duplexes in Holiday Island right now on single lots.
Yeah, I know, they fuss over them all the time because they got different people owning one side, rather than, they don't have dual ownership. They got 2 owners.
Yeah, because ISID assesses based upon UBL, unit block lot. So there's only one assessment, they gotta split it somehow.
But if they're not assessing duplexes, how are they assessing condos?
Because that's the way they do it.
I know,
No,
Condo association,
Condos were laid out and they have individual ownership there.
that's right, but
the duplex, I think a duplex by definition has to be one owner.
it's not in our definition.
We don't have it defined, but we have to define it and then use it properly.
At one time, people bought duplexes and they lived in one side and rented out the other side.
They still do. I mean,
it's also common though for people as for, investment, would buy a duplex. But again, that would be just one owner.
Well, but, you know, is it only one unit that had a covenant that is outlawed duplexes, or the rest of Holiday Island can have duplexes?
I don't know.
Duplexes can be anywhere, I think.
They're disallowed someplace.
They're disallowed in the section around the golf course.
Yeah, I think in our unit, you can't build duplexes anymore, they used to.
Well, I was gonna say, there are some up there.
Well, yeah, but they're-
Of course.
Going forward, they can't.
I was just
Well, yeah,
basing that
yeah.
on observation.
I mean,
Yeah, there's quite a few up there. You can go find them,
there's a multitude of problems with duplexes that,
but they're already there.
I mean, we're not talking about already there, we're talking about
Going forward.
going forward. Do we want, do you want to allow more of them?
Well, I think we're getting to that section where they're either permitted or conditional use or stuff where, we're
Well,
gonna go
at
through
least
that.
defining them.
Well, I think there's two ways of looking at this. You know, you said, do we want to allow it? You know, I look at it from the standpoint of, can we prohibit it?
I look at it both ways.
Yeah, you know, duplexes where one person, you know, owns the duplex and lives in half and rents out the other half, or maybe rents out both halves. Its investment property is incredibly common, so common that I don't think that we could prohibit it, or would even want to
Well,
prohibit it.
well, I guess that's the district doing that, but they prohibit them up on Holiday Island Drive or in the
It's
golf.
in the unit covenant, but I don't know that from a city perspective that we could
When they
prohibit it.
did those duplexes up at Peachtree, how did they come out, Lynn? They're duplex with individual ownership. They're plotted to, and then in essence, then they're townhouses.
They're
Townhouses.
they actually fit our technical definition
The
of
town.
condos, because there's common property around there. I forget what they're called,
Not on the duplexes, is not common ground.
There is, if you look on the plot map, on Data Scout. And I made the assumption, I may be wrong, because I didn't check it, but I just assumed that whoever owns Peachtree, you know, maintains all that common ground around they're called bungalows or something.
What's our definition of bungalow there, man?
We don't have bungalow.
But I will make a comment about prohibiting duplexes or whatever. We need rental property out here. It's needed in Carroll County, so.
Yeah, my opinion is we need to allow duplexes and, but I think that a duplex should be
Single ownership.
single ownership. And, if it's on one lot, then it's easy to determine that it's single ownership. If it can be built on two lots, because we have a lot of narrow lots here, then how would we control the dual ownership aspect of it? If somebody wanted to build one, there'd have to be a deed restriction or something like that that says that the two lots can't be sold separately. Because then it's a townhouse, it's not a duplex.
Well,
If the builder wants the two units to be separate and separable legally for sale, then they need to be classified as townhouses, not as duplexes.
I'm just thinking of, somebody might wanna do that, especially on these 30-foot lots out here, up and down Wednesday, it would be perfect for that kind of thing.
And you couldn't even build one on 30 foot.
I mean, they're basically useless
They have
as
to go up.
30-foot lots.
Well, we took care of that 15 years ago, and they said we did it illegally, so.
So are we okay with leaving it 5,000 square feet? And 8 units per acre?
I don't think you can build a duplex on a 5,000 square foot lot. Because we just said that the maximum size structure would be 2,500 square feet.
Right. First house I lived in was 1,040 square feet.
And no garage, then it would be
Yeah,
a
single
duplex.
garage, yeah, single garage.
And
It was a small house,
How big's a typical garage, 500 square feet?
14 by 20, 280,
Oh, it's less than 500.
yeah, for single.
You could put 2 garages and
Well, 5,000 square feet
1,500
you're
square
talking
feet
about
of
is
living
each,
space.
the lot is on each side.
Okay, so you convinced me that you can build a duplex on a 5,000 acre
It
lot.
might be a small one.
The next question is, yeah, this is just a minimum size lot.
Right.
So you could build on a bigger lot. Okay, all right. I'm good with it.
I just made a note that we must investigate if the city can prohibit duplexes or townhouses in R1. Okay, R3. District is characterized by single-family residential development on lots not less than 2,500 square feet with a maximum density not exceeding 16 units per acre. So these are traditionally apartment-type buildings or complexes. And put a note in there that it's not exceeding 4 units per attached living complex. So the largest set of attached units could be 4, or 4-plex. I looked in a lot of different places and I didn't see any examples of 6-plexes or 8-plexes where the houses are strung out. 4-plex was about it.
You
So,
might have a 2-story.
yeah, we have 2-story. So condominium complexes shall be on lots not less than 5,000 square feet. And a lot size not less than twice the aggregate square footage of the condominium and attachments not exceeding 4 units per attached living complex. So I tried to say in this R3 that if it's a condo, it's gotta be it has to be at least 5,000 square feet lot.
Do we have minimum structure sizes like of living space, like
We,
1,200?
as a city, I don't think we can dictate that.
Can't?
Yeah, and I was gonna make that follow-up comment to Jerry's comment on duplexes, that there are, we're gonna find ourselves at different points in the process here to being in conflict with the covenants. And I raised a question with our city attorney many, many months ago, and then I never followed up on it, but I need to ask the question again and get an answer. If the city allows something that is prohibited in the covenants, is the city liable for any kind of legal action? Are there any consequences associated with the city allowing something that's prohibited in the contract? That'll come directly into play with the building permits. If the city issues a building permit for something because it doesn't violate the city ordinances, the building inspector enforces the building or the city ordinances. However, if that ends up being in conflict with something that's prohibited in the unit covenant, at this point, all, it's really, I mean, the city's only issued 2 building permits yet. But when I'm asked the question, I tell people I advise people if what they're doing or wanting to do is in violation of the covenant. I'm not telling them that it's prohibited by the city, I'm telling them that it's, it might be prohibited by the covenant. I think the way I put it to a realtor last week was, it may be legal, but you would end up being, your client would end up being public enemy number one in their neighborhood. If they're okay with that, then I can't tell you that you can't do it.
I wonder if we could either limit our liability or remove our liability by putting a disclaimer on the building permit itself, that we give the person saying, you were responsible for any violations of the covenants. This only lets you do it for the city rules.
I thought we put a thing in the building.
That's why I need.
That would be a
make
little
sure that
stronger
they-
than having a verbal.
Yeah, I need a legal opinion on it, because it's gonna come up over and over again.
Sure.
Like, I don't think that we can prohibit, metal buildings. If somebody wants to build a garage, a steel building, garage, butler building or whatever, I'm not sure the city can prohibit that type of
Well, then
construction.
look at when the covenants were written, like 1970,
Yeah.
rarely updated.
See, that's the key, and somebody said they automatically roll over. I mean, is that what it says in every covenant?
The covenants have that language one way or another, that they
And some of them have
Automatically
been
renew
updated,
for 10
you know,
years or something like
70s,
that.
80s.
But I thought one of the statements in the building code regulations said that we were going to adhere to the covenant.
to the best of our ability,
Yeah.
what the law allows us to do.
In fact, we're adamant that we are not, the city is not
I understand that,
the
but
defender of the covenants.
Well, and you've already pointed out 2 or 3 places that there are statutes that prohibit us doing things that are actually in the covenants.
Mhm.
So,
And I'm gonna say that that's probably pretty typical in cities, like, you might have a neighborhood, a POA, might live in the middle of Springfield or something, and your little subdivision is a POA,
wants more.
and the POA says you can't have a board fence in the backyard. Well, the city, doesn't prohibit that, but the
And that's
POA does.
perfectly normal too. It would be perfectly normal to have something more restricted in your neighborhood.
But it's a
that
little
you've
different.
agreed to.
It's a little different if you let them start building permanent structures that are, definitely in violation of the covenant. Like, the city can't regulate, what type of building material, like the exterior building materials can't regulate what type of roofing material. And the covenants, a lot of the covenants say you can't have wooden shingles. But I don't think that we can legally say that in our building code, or in our.
I mean, what you said earlier is that we need to find that definitively get an opinion on that. I mean, because, again, I've said this so many times, I know y'all are tired of it, but in the years that I was on the council in Oklahoma, not one time did anyone brought up this might violate the covenants. I mean, we mandated no parking in yards. We mandated if you built a carport, it had to attach to seamlessly to the roof in the same roofing material. We didn't allow if you had in certain areas you had to have a concrete driveway. Couldn't be dirt or gravel. I mean, just all sorts of things. And this is a 50-year-old community. That was a 100-year-old community. So I don't know, we just need to find out. And
Okay?
Yep.
Section E, R1M. Again, we created this zone to apply to Unit 1 for now and any future developments like it, but this district is characterized by single-family residential developments of lots not less than 10,000 square feet with a maximum density not exceeding 4 units per acre. It goes on, so it's set up the same as R1 as far as size and limitations on density. Then the F for R1MH for the manufactured home district, I size that to match the R2s. So if someone wants to build a manufactured housing park or a subdivision, they have to be in this 5,000 square foot size. That's what I suggested. I see there's a note at the bottom that I added about the dimensions. I've got to chase that down. The numbering scheme is different. Okay, any other discussion about size or density?
Do we have any idea where this RMH might be located on the thing?
I don't, what I envisioned it would be probably some development area that someone might be after outside this municipal, inside our jurisdiction that we could have some influence over. We don't have zoning authority outside the municipal limits, but we have some, I don't know, we have some sort of influence on what happens inside our jurisdiction. So, that I don't know the answer to. In the next section, just for the notes, 14.07.02, there's some cross references that I chased down and made edits to, so nothing major there, just edits.
And can I bring up a paragraph
Certainly.
that I stumbled over in that 14.07.02?
Okay.
Paragraph C.
Okay.
When a use is proposed that is not listed in this chapter, the City Planning Commission shall recommend the appropriate districts based on land uses that are similar in size, bulk, and traffic generation. If the applicant does not agree with this interpretation, he or she may appeal the interpretation to the Board of Adjustment.
Okay.
Seems like, was it last week we were talking about the Board of Adjustment?
Mm-hmm.
And my question is, should the Board of Adjustment supersede the Planning Commission? And my thought was that it seemed to me like it ought to be, instead of the Board of Adjustment, it ought to be the City Council, that there ought to be a clear hierarchy. And when we were talking about the Board of Adjustment, it was only for appeals from the building inspector.
Well, it is also these kinds of appeals.
But we didn't write that in the Board of Adjustment document, I don't think. And that's what I was reading. But I'm thinking, if you do a hierarchy of appeals, you have the building inspector, the Board of Adjustment. The Board of Adjustment appeals to the City Council.
Mm-hmm.
So why wouldn't a decision of the Board of Adjustment here appeal to the City Council?
Because in the structures that I've read, the City Planning Commission's decisions about use are appealed to the Board of Adjustment. I've read that in several places. Not just these that we've modeled from, but other municipals.
Well, could you take it further up to the planning? The thing I worry about is that two people can make the decision on the Board of Adjustment.
Yes.
The Planning Commission, it takes at least 3 of us.
The Commission of 5.
Yeah. And the City Council, it takes 3 of us. I'm just worried.
But there are
2
limits.
people making the decision who aren't on the Planning Commission could be problematic
But then they can also appeal to the City Council.
if we write that in there.
It does say that if.
This paragraph doesn't say that.
No, but the Board of Adjustment ordinance,
We just
I'm
passed.
guessing,
if you add that sentence in there.
We can find that text, it's pasted in here at the bottom. Board adjustment is clear at the bottom in section, okay, starts on page 57. Powers and duties. Now in B, we say they decide the appeals allege an error from the building inspector. And at the end of B, it says, last sentence, a variance from the terms of these zoning regs shall not be granted by the board unless and until.
Well, it does say under appeals, it doesn't limit, it says appeals from the decisions of the Board of Adjustment shall be first heard by the city council. That might cover it.
Well, that's the appeals. What you were talking about is applicant goes to the planning commission, the commission says no to whatever they wanted, and then the illustration gave was the Board of Adjustment would say, it's okay. So there's no appeal to go to the city council. It would have been a done deal. They overrode.
That's true. The planning commission
They
could
do have
appeal.
authority. They do have that authority. Even in this case, if it's a decision of the building inspector, they still can override, because the building inspector is enforcing what the planning commission put in place, what the city has in place. So it still gives the Board of Adjustment authority to override that.
Yeah, I think the fact, well,
But I don't know if there's any process then of the city council intervening and say, wait a minute, hold the phone. You really can't do that.
I think that when there's something in there said they couldn't make any kind of decision that was contrary to the zoning law.
Right, but the illustration we're just talking about, the section says, if it doesn't say, if it's not listed, if the use is not listed. When I wrote that, or when I copied that, what I thought of, what uses would not be listed that wouldn't be covered? And I was thinking about the list of uses that are in the covenants, what kinds of businesses, and we illustrate that in the description of what small retail means. And so it says like, and there's a whole long list of kinds of business that can take place in small retail. And then in the uses section, the chart, it says small retail permitted or not. We say yes or no, so we fall back to the definition.
I'm thinking of a case where the planning commission says, okay, I think you should do it this way, the applicant doesn't agree, they appeal it to the Board of Adjustment, and they make a decision about it, and either, I mean, it could be either way, either the person who is doing the use, buying the property, doesn't agree with the Board of Adjustment denying it, or maybe a citizen or a fellow business owner or something else says, oh, that's going to be detrimental to my business or my property if they do it this way. They want a further appeal of it. Seems to me like it ought to go to the city council, like other business and Board of Adjustment.
You got me confused, because I thought that's what we had decided.
And that's not the way it's written. It says the Board of Adjustment makes the final judgment here. Now,
It's in something, because we
Well,
talked about it at one of these meetings.
on page 58, there is an appeals paragraph for the Board of Adjustment, and it doesn't seem to limit it. It just says appeals from decisions of the Board of Adjustment shall be first heard by the city council. So it sounds like it's already maybe in here that you could appeal any decision by the Board of Adjustment to the city council.
The way you just read, that would mean anybody could appeal it to the city council.
So if we're in agreement that that's the case, I'm fine. But when I read this in 140702, it sounded like the Board of Adjustment made the final decision.
Moving right
Do we
along.
need to make 14.2604, the appeals, a little stronger?
I don't
Instead of
think
just
so.
simply saying appeals from the decision or appeals from all decisions?
Well, what was the language we had in the ordinance for, on the board, creating?
That's what's in here. It's what if you're looking at the current document, I pasted that in. So that's the language
I would say, yeah.
on page 58. This document that's on the website has the language from the ordinance. It's all in yellow.
I think if you said all decisions, I think
That would be, we would have to change that with a city council change in the ordinance. Because this is the language that we've already passed it. We passed it last Tuesday, the 18th.
Yeah.
Well, from the decisions, from all the decisions, says the same thing, right?
well, if you want to, you could just add, could appeal to the Board of Adjustment.
We're talking about the text on 14702.
Yeah, under C.
Okay.
Appeal the interpretation to the Board of Adjustment.
Yes.
I don't know, I don't see a problem with the way it's
And
worded.
I don't, if you think we're gonna get this right the first time too.
Well, that's true. But what do we mean by first heard?
First heard is, I believe I took that from the statute that was changed in 21 in Arkansas, that it used to be that it went right to a district court. And then it says, we may by ordinance say they're first heard by the city council. So any problem you have with the Board of Adjustment's decision, you have to appeal to the city council before you go to district court. You have to go to the city, we said by ordinance,
Okay.
you have to go to the city council. It used to be, without that change in the statutes, you went to district court. So the Board of Adjustment used to be the final word.
I'm okay with leaving appeals on appeals from decisions of the Board of Adjustment shall be first heard by the city council. And I can interpret that to mean that decision then go to the city council if they're really important. I'm okay. I just wanted to talk about it. So I understood.
All right.
I can buy into that.
On page 27, I still need to create all the tables that the appendixes are referred to, so skip by that. Page 29. That's where go ahead, Linda.
25, back to 25.
Page 25.
And it's under D, where it says, and it carries over to the top of page 25, talking about a principal structure. In addition to the accessory uses, an accessory structure may be permitted for sheltering riding horses. Do we really need that paragraph in here? Do we really want that paragraph in here?
I have a neighbor that really desperately wants to have some area, and he's gonna buy that area when so his wife can have a horse. And there's more, but one, he's gonna buy a section, and he doesn't mind that it being kind of remote, but he was sure hoping that, he'd have a place that he could have a horse here.
Does he check the covenants? It's not all the units allow it.
There is one, I think, toward, I'm gonna say, all those, streets called, like Comanche, Indian, someplace in there, but supposedly, but you had to have so many lots, there was a minimum amount on the covenants, a minimum amount of acreage, and if that was tough, putting those together. He's trying to do it, but it isn't easy, the way it's written isn't easy.
several covenants allow horses. So this was a nod to the covenants, and it was in the code that I copied, I believe, from, like their R1A for their acreage size lots in the regs that we had, so.
Have 2 acres, I would be 2 acres.
The wording in covenants is not very clear, but it kind of reads like you can even have a barn, but it can't be, it has to be more than 50 feet away from the house.
And I guess my question is to you, you've researched it more than the rest of us. Do the statutes allow us to prohibit something like that?
Is a horse considered an agricultural animal?
Pretty much.
Well, we can then. We can limit that.
Horses, cows.
Or transportation,
Say that again?
transportation animal.
Substitute golf cart.
Yeah.
No, I just wondered, is that, I mean, there's so many things we can't prohibit. I just wondered whether that might be something we could.
Yeah.
I mean, and even so, 100 feet, a structure, a barn, you know, that's 100 feet from the adjacent property. Seems far enough to me, for the noxious odors coming out of that area.
I don't know if you grew up on a farm.
I've been to plenty of them, and I've been to horses before.
Some of us are from farm country.
You
I'd
grew up
rather-
on a farm.
I'd rather live 100 feet from a horse barn than a chicken house.
Oh, isn't that the
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's 100 feet from the adjacent property line, doesn't limit, it's 100 feet from the next door neighbor.
I don't think
Yeah.
we're gonna have to deal with it.
Near to their property.
Right.
There's only a couple of pieces of property in Holiday Island, I think, that you could even possibly do this on, and it'd be like where Flanagan and Gary Hansen have
We're way
those
on the outskirts, I know.
larger units, you know. So are we going to want to
I mean,
allow animals? Yeah, I think
If you
so.
bought 4 lots, you could easily put together 2 acres.
I already got 2 acres.
It's a bit ironic considering
if
this
it's-
place started as a
Yeah,
horse.
I'm sure that we can regulate where you can have horses, you know, by ordinance. You wouldn't want to have horses in the middle of
You
a
cannot,
high-density residential area.
I would also think we could limit the number. I mean,
Well, this limited it to 2 horses.
Yes. Paragraph 2, no more than 2 horses are kept and sheltered on the property.
what page is that on?
It's at the top of page 25.
I skipped over that one.
Well, it wasn't in my notes. We've talked about it before. Paragraph D starts with only one principal structure.
How many zebras can you have?
2.
I think there's this.
2 horses on 2 acres, that's not unreasonable.
And it also says sheltering riding horses. It doesn't say race horses. It doesn't say plow horses, it says riding horses. So it can't be Clydesdales.
What about pet horses?
Well, I don't know, it must be a riding horse.
I'm gonna get a pony.
Well, I mean, that's generally what people do, if they're doing it in a residential area, they'll have a Shetland pony for the grandkids, or.
Well, animals and livestock is covered in there's a total section of regulations in the municipal code that covers animals and livestock, so I don't think we have to get down in the nitty gritty here on probably. Potbelly pigs and chickens is gonna be a much bigger issue.
We're gonna get into it, which zoning districts it can be in.
Right.
Very shortly here.
Okay, so we can scroll down to page
What's that
33.
noise? Oh, it's him?
And 14.7.8 is where I redefined, if you will, the governmental districts, put a definition on them. The C was the old H, the F is the new one. The purpose of this district to identify the lands and properties that are owned and controlled by the federal government, agency, or department. I'm trying to think what the text might say under uses. I just changed it to reserve. I had penciled in no general or specific uses are included or restricted. I don't know what I can do about the federal, so maybe just leave it reserved. Take that sentence out.
Yeah, we're not gonna tell the government what to do.
I didn't think so
Only thing you
either.
got is the shoreline
We're on page 33.
on the lake, government land you got.
Okay. Again, there's appendix reference on this page that we don't need to worry about. On page 43, manufactured housing units.
Yeah, under 140709, you could probably just put a disclaimer statement in there that says that uses of these properties will be determined by government, by the federal government or something like that. Because there are some, like the point on the island, where the federal government allows us to use that like a little park. But they determine how much of the shoreline we can use and stuff like that, so.
The marina is inside the federal government's control.
And inside the city limits, yeah.
So we're not gonna label that commercial, it's gonna be federal land, federal property.
But it's leased to a commercial.
And,
It's not owned commercial.
I don't know.
I think you're right. I think the Corps of Engineers determines whether or not Holiday Island has a marina, not the city of Holiday Island.
Would
Nor
the
I
city determine
Nor I said, yeah.
what's legitimate for them to sell and how they conduct their business?
I don't know. Because we created a boundary that includes a whole lot of federal grant. The core line is inside the city limits.
And would it be maybe a licensed business inside the city?
I think we can license it as a business.
Okay, page 43, 14.16.07.
What page are we on now?
43. The note that we've had on here for a couple meetings is determine if we can limit how old a unit can be moved into or onto a lot zoned R1M that permits manufactured homes and any future development for new RMH. So I think last we talked, Dan, you said you were going to do some further research and see if we could do that. We could limit how old they can be. Because the statute was changed 45 years ago.
I haven't done that.
Okay.
Thanks a lot for reminding me.
I'm sorry.
I think we also did say though that they would still have to be up to code. The building inspector would have a right to inspect it, make sure
Right.
everything.
In fact, Lynn found some stuff that he forwarded to me that I haven't had time to digest yet, but it ties into that, and it ties into if somebody wants to, like if somebody came to the city and said, I have a manufactured home, I want to do this and this and this to it. Before I would have just said, yeah, as long as the foundation's right and the electrical is right and everything else, I would have probably issued the building code. But the statute, the federal housing statute, says that you can't do anything to that property or to that unit that would cause it to be out of compliance with the original federal standard for manufactured homes. So now we need to do some more research is adding a room onto a manufactured home, what impact does that have on the original HUD standard?
Why aren't they making it necessary to be in compliance with the current standard?
They are.
It is, it says that you can't mess with the way it was built.
Yeah.
You can't change the way it was built. So the question that we had faced last time we met was, will we permit an addition? And we didn't know, so I did that research and found the federal statute.
As an example, there are requirements in the HUD standard for manufactured homes that says that you have to have a pitched roof, and it defines what that is. You have to have 2x6 walls, and a whole bunch of other things. So if I issue a building permit for somebody to add on to their manufactured home, and they put a flat roof on that addition, and they cut the wall out, make it a big open room, and now the 2x6 studs that the original manufacturer put in there, in compliance with the law, they're gone. So now, if I just allowed that structure to be not in conformance with the federal housing standards. So I need to do some more research on that. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if you can technically do anything with a manufactured home.
Complying with the current standards, it would be okay. Why wouldn't that be compliant with the current standards?
Because I don't know I'm not an expert in the current standards, so.
Well, you aren't an expert in the old standards either, are you?
No, but the old, there weren't any old standards. I mean, prior to 1976, there was no federal standard for manufactured homes. Now there is. And in that standard, it says that the manufacturer is responsible for that unit being in conformance with the federal regulation governing manufactured homes. All of the construction requirements. And if that manufactured home has to be transported to the work site in more than one piece, and work has to be done on site to finish it up, like, adding your HVAC and all of that, the original manufacturer of that manufactured home, still has responsibility to make sure that it's in compliance when it's all done. They can license that, I think, responsibility to to their distributor or whatever, but ultimately, the manufacturer is responsible for that home all the way until it's signed off, on its foundation and its final resting place. So, now, if we have, as a city, which means to me, as a building inspector, if I were the building inspector, all I'd have to do is go out there while they're putting this whole thing together and say, who's your federally licensed inspector that's supervising this job? I want to see his credentials, and I want to make sure that they're in conformance with HUD regulations. That I'm not scared about, although we don't have anything in our building code that covers that, and we need to add that in there. But now, when it comes to modifying that structure somewhere down the road, what are we allowed to do without violating that HUD?
Manufacturer may be out of business.
Well, then we shouldn't allow additions.
Then, yeah. And the only thing I'm worried about is whether or not the city is in any kind of jeopardy if we allow them to modify that manufactured home, which was built in strict conformance to a federal standard. So, and I don't know the answer to that, and I don't know,
But building a deck off like the back door, that would be an addition that would not
right,
violate any.
right, if they're not actually modifying the structure, then it's, I'm sure it's okay.
I think your example is taking out a wall, and something.
And
Or cutting the
the
roof.
safest thing there is to not allow that unless they can prove that their plans, you know, somebody at HUD signed off on them. Well, I don't know.
It's just something that came up, that
Yeah,
it's a live and learn thing, and I'm glad that Lynn found it, because it's something I need to follow up on and make sure we're covered.
I see.
When it comes up.
On page 47, 14.16.80 is the definition that we talked about needing for manufactured housing subdivisions. And the only distinction really in this between the parks has to do with ownership of the lots. And the last sentence, resident managers in manufactured housing subdivisions, a manager is not required to reside within the subdivision area. Different than a manufactured housing park. Okay.
We're gonna do that anyway, so.
14.26 is the Board of Adjustment that we passed on ordinance 22-2 last week. And then finally on page 64, the 14.30, talked about needing a fee schedule. And I haven't developed that chart yet, not knowing if we're gonna add additional fees. I did some investigation about fee schedules. Most of the other municipalities pay consultants to look at drawings and diagrams. There's always a fee attached with that. So it appeared to me that the kinds of fees they were charging for those kinds of things probably covered their subcontracting costs. You know, they took them to engineers, they took them to whoever.
If somebody wants to do a big development.
Yeah, you want to build a two-story apartment building.
Mhm.
I don't know that you as a building inspector would look at that and say, yeah, I can approve that. That we want to do those kinds of developments, and there were fees for those kinds of applications.
Cities would have engineering companies on retainer or whatever.
Sure. Okay, so that's all I have for modified text. If you want to go back to page 25, we can start talking about the residential uses, what's going to be permitted in residential areas.
Can people bring things up here, or is that at the very end of the meetings, or there isn't a place for that?
Say it again.
If I have a question or when can I bring that up, or is that questions at the end of the meeting, or?
If you're here just to ask that question, and then you'd rather go and do something else, I'll let you ask the question right now. I don't wanna keep you here all day just to, ask a question.
Have you zoned for a cemetery mortuary?
It's in the list.
Yeah,
We don't have a zone for it, but it's one of the areas that we're going to consider where they can be placed.
Well, I like to be in favor of it, and it's a real moneymaker for the city. I know that I just buried my parents, my wife's parents, in a small city in California, rural Northern California, if anybody, Chico. And the city got $9,000 apiece for everybody. They owned the land for that, and then it was $29,000 for the mortuary and all the casket, and then of course we still met with people, and that was above that. But they own the land, and I hope we're not going to be. That Chico's a fairly old city, but they get $9,000 a person to be buried in their cemeteries, and I think that it'd be a moneymaker. But I like to go to cemeteries. Now this sounds gross, but I'm a traveling nurse, and we worked in the Outer Banks, North Carolina, and they had a cemetery from the 1700s and they put a statue to the city mayor of that time. They started out from Switzerland, and they made a small park, and you sit there and read the dates and the times of the original settlers, and it goes on to Civil War, to modern World War One, and like this, pretty extensive. And many people found that not only was it the history of the city, but that it was to feed the birds and the different things, and some of them had statues, and we contemplated the life history of those founding people of the city. I find that it's a place that the city is built upon, and I, for one, would like a cemetery, but it's a moneymaker for the city. At least Chico sure got it, but also you kind of expect to pay for the maintenance and the upkeep. They own the land, and they kind of, I guess, pay for the people who mow the lawn and stuff like that. But it was a real revenue. But with all the different things from COVID to you name it, and I don't know, if people are passing away, and it'd be nice for these the people that have settled this city, started it out, for them to have a place to put their footprints on, and people to contemplate who they were passing.
If the city were gonna do that, we'd have to set up a cemetery commission. We would have to find revenue to get it started.
Well, there's
You'd
several,
have to purchase land.
Yeah,
there's several chains of like mortuaries and ones like that I suspect might finance the whole thing. Being as I've been a nurse since the 70s, I find that there were several chains wherever I went as a traveling nurse, and I suspect that they might finance everything about it, and the city will just reap the profits from it and the rewards of having um, a place for the citizens.
I think that's a really good forward-thinking idea you've got.
we had talked about it, that it's on our list of things to zone for, within the context of this, meeting here. We're not going to decide whether or not we're going to have a cemetery commission, but, it will be on the, it'll be in the zoning plan to have someplace designated as being, suitable or acceptable for cemeteries.
In more support of what he's saying though, the closest cemetery I know is the Eureka Springs Cemetery, which is getting pretty crowded.
Unity Church has got
Uh,
Unity Church has got what do you call it?
It's not a cemetery, but it's a garden.
No, it's a Calvarium.
Calvariums.
And St. Elizabeth's got a similar thing.
I got one over
You do
there.
have some of that. They're not cemeteries as such, public cemeteries.
Biggest problem in Holiday Island is
Digging
takes a
up the ground.
jackhammer to dig a hole 6 foot deep.
Well, I do assume that it's gonna have to be a sizable backhoe or something,
We just have
or excavator.
sea burials.
At lake.
Sea burials.
But it's something to consider. I mean, because there could be a need, if we get growing families out here eventually. I mean, we've been practically mostly retired people that came from someplace else and go back to those places to get buried or live with our loved ones forever. But, I think if you consider that Holiday Island may be growing into something different now,
We would like that.
it's very appropriate.
That's my vision for Holiday Island, is for it to become a place where people
Grow families.
say that it's my hometown.
Yeah.
Now, 99% of the people in Holiday Island, if you ask them where their hometown is, they'll tell you someplace in Oklahoma or Texas or Kansas
Iowa
or
Nebraska.
someplace,
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
They don't.
I want people to say my hometown is Holiday Island, Arkansas, but I may never live to
Probably won't.
see that day. But
Sorry, what?
That sounds like something younger people.
I think we need to move on here,
We
so.
need his name and address.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask.
David Tuman, like
David
President
Tuman?
Truman, but, yeah, Tuman. What would be the next stage? What is the meeting that I would go to, help out or bring it up then if?
It would be a regular city council meeting, which is the third
Tuesday.
Third Tuesday at 6.
Tuesday at 6
Every
p.m.
month.
Thank you.
Watch for the announcements. They'll be out there.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming.
You're welcome to stay and listen to all of this. I thought you were on the edge of your seat there, I know, that it was,
They didn't fall
You
asleep.
need a ride home?
Yeah, you can't go.
It was interesting.
yeah, that door jam needs adjusting.
You push it hard when you go out.
Okay.
Okay, we're at the top of page 25, residential zoning districts.
Oh, boy.
How are we gonna attack this with a group of us like this?
Just go down the list and we just look across and note any changes.
All right, single family detached.
If anybody, I think just go down each one of the lines, anybody has any disagreement or that it is.
Mostly.
I marked the last one, RMH not permitted. Single family detached not in a mobile home park or a mobile home subdivision.
Sounds good.
Okay with
It
NP?
wouldn't be an R-1M, you wouldn't have a single detached,
You do already, if that's unit 1.
okay? But a mobile home park, we're not, it's gonna be an NP.
That'd be the MH, right? So not permitted in MH. Duplexes.
What about R2? Yeah. R2 is duplexes,
And
Mostly-
townhomes.
Mostly duplex.
So if someone wants to build a single family detached home, are we gonna permit it? Or make it conditional? Or not permitted?
If they want to, I think they ought to.
I think so.
okay,
Duplexes,
not permitted. We should all along here.
well, we put the text in R2s, in R3.
Yeah, we
Don't
have
need them
to,
some-
It's gotta be permitted.
Well,
we have to allow.
the thing I've got says no, so.
That's what I'm saying, what was on here was just a chart that was there, and I changed the titles and didn't pay any attention to what the text below is, so
Okay,
don't
so
use
we're
that as a
changing
guide.
R2 and R3 to no.
Permitted,
Permitted.
okay? Triplex, quadplex. Okay, the way it's on here?
Yep.
Townhomes,
Wait.
okay,
It's permitted in R3.
yes,
Okay, sounds good.
Oh, there, okay, I got you.
that's the way the text is.
Right.
Townhome, condominium, same thing.
Yeah.
Detached accessory dwelling unit,
We don't allow those.
That's why it says NP.
not permitted all the way across, okay?
Wait a minute.
That's correct. Detached accessory dwelling. We decided in talking about all the text, we would not allow that
You can't
anywhere.
build a house in your backyard for grandma.
I want that.
No.
Sorry.
I don't even have a grandma, but
I would think.
I think having a small unit is not obtrusive. If you want to have a little cottage in the back, under 1,000 square feet, you can put conditions on it.
I don't think there's anywhere in this building code or in this zoning ordinance though that allows 2 single-family residences on one lot.
You're inviting yourself into a never land.
Two separate,
Yeah,
I mean,
just because it's separate.
if you want grandma to live with you, build a duplex.
Right on.
But you
Why
already
doesn't it
have
be-
a house on a lot, and it's a huge lot. And you'd just like a cottage for your loved one, so that you can keep an eye on them. Or that maybe the kids, your grown children, when they visit with their baby, know, they can stay out there in that
Mm.
little cottage.
And if your lot is big enough, like Ken's, do you put, can you put three houses on that lot? So
It's
you,
unobtrusive.
grandma and your cousins can move into, and then how about 4 houses on a lot?
We put restrictions on it, I'm not saying it's unrestricted. You know, it can't be over a certain size perhaps, especially in relation to the main house. You've gotta provide for parking.
I just put up a garage and let her live in there.
What's wrong with it? If
I
you
don't have a
the
grandma
lot to
either.
do it.
I think
any of us
you're
have
opening up
grandmothers.
a can of worms.
Okay, what's this can of worms, tell me.
Because you're gonna get things that you're not foreseeing, and
Yeah, not saying these are insurmountable problems, but ISID would have to run 2 water meters, they'd have to have 2 water
Why do
meters,
they need two water?
because it's 2
You're paying
independent.
for it, so the main owner's paying for it.
yeah, but you're gonna get to a case where that isn't gonna happen, it ain't gonna be a family member, it's gonna be a rental unit.
That was my thought.
Yeah, I kinda thought we hashed all this out once before and decided that we didn't want grandma houses in the backyard, because they won't be grandma houses, they'll be rental property.
Okay.
And we
You're
spent a
gonna
lot of
have all
time,
kind, you just open it up, I don't wanna go
we
there.
talked about,
Prohibit it from being rental property.
Yeah. You can't.
Yeah, you can.
Oh, shit.
You can make a city regulation to prohibit that.
How are you gonna know whether they rented it or it's grandma?
May I make a comment?
Love it, yeah.
Because I just got here from California,
Yeah,
and, boy, that's what happens. They build the little house in the back for grandma, and then it becomes rental property, and before you know it, you've got people turning their single-family home into, oh, I'm just gonna put an apartment upstairs for the kids, and then you end up with 2 apartments on this house, 3 apartments on that house. All of a sudden, your community of single-family homes has become a multi-unit place with the traffic and everything
I don't
else.
think
So
you wanna go there.
when you start saying, oh, it's okay if it's just a grandma house in the back, it's not gonna stay that way. And, California just passed an ordinance that they can no longer have, communities of single-family residences. They've done away with that in California now. So.
I just think it's a lot of trouble.
Don't go there.
I don't think you wanna go there.
I don't think so either.
I don't wanna go there.
may I have your name?
Yes, Sharon Lawler, Lawler.
You could send grandma down to his house.
And I sure, well, I don't have a mother-in-law anymore either, so.
God, that
the
would
only
be.
reason I brought it
I
up
wanna
was because
prohibit
I know
mother-in-law
someone else
houses
who's
for
expressed an
sure.
interest in doing such a thing. And I don't want it to be rented, I don't want us
There's
to
no way
allow
we
that
can
kind of
keep it from
situation
being
at all.
rented.
But I do know people out here who've had, their mother or mother-in-law, and they needed to keep an eye on them. And that, they had a downstairs unit in their house that they could put them in, and it had its own kitchen and its own bath and everything.
There's a lot of people
That worked
that,
out really well for that family.
that you don't build them.
Yeah, I don't
Not
think people
everybody
have a
has
problem
that
with
in their
that.
house today, so.
It's far less likely
Standalone.
that somebody is gonna rent that out to just anybody that can pay the bills,
So I would only want it if we could totally restrict it, where it wouldn't ever be rented.
There's no
Yeah,
way.
You can't,
couldn't
Not
keep up
sure
with
how
it.
you do that.
Yeah.
You can restrict it, it's gonna happen.
You'd never be able to keep up with it.
Right,
Okay.
where do we leave off?
Emergency housing units. I believe in our text, we said not permitted anywhere.
I don't see why you'd want them, I don't know what it is.
Emergency housing unit, a manufactured housing unit or residential design manufactured housing unit
We
is
don't want
located
them.
on the same lot as a principal single-family dwelling to be used solely for the purpose of providing temporary accommodations for a family member in need of daily assistance due to health reasons, such reasons shall be certified by a licensed physician.
No,
And somewhere in the text, I think we said that they're not gonna be permitted anywhere.
no. Not permitted anywhere.
I didn't want a manufactured
In
unit.
the first place, it's a manufactured housing
Right.
unit. Where it's normally just.
No,
It's not stick built.
Yeah,
Where are we at?
okay,
So NP across the board.
okay, good.
Multifamily,
R3 has got a P, that's the only way you want.
okay. Manufactured housing units, only in the RMH.
Right.
Manufactured housing units of residential design. So this is where we're talking about the old term of modular homes, where they bring in several sections and put them together, and you can't tell them from a stick-built house.
Yeah, the ones that you really can't tell, but they're different.
Right. So what's marked in here is conditional for R1, not permitted anywhere else. I thought maybe,
Conditional being what conditions again?
well, it's the conditional use section
Is
of
it
our
R1
text.
or R1M, this condition? Both?
Both it says.
Well,
But what are the conditions under which it would be permitted?
Whatever's in our text for conditions, I believe that's,
well,
I remember
I
what
mean,
section it is.
a manufacturing residential design, the house I built, second house I built in Pine Bluff came from one of those, and it was a
14.12.
I mean, there's no difference between those and a stick built.
Yeah, and I think once they submit their documentation to get the permit, you can tell if it's legit.
I mean, I don't know, there's some of those, we got some of them out here, the Walter, or United Homes, or United.
They're getting less and less, hard to even tell the difference.
But that mine was a big company, came in about 4 semis.
Okay, we can
Eventually
move
we'll
on.
have they'll pull up a printer and have 3-dimensional
Manufactured housing, where-
We're not gonna,
But
we're not
with
gonna
our
allow
internet,
any
yeah.
of it.
Okay, so we're okay with that being conditional in R1 and only?
Yeah.
Not also R2? Someone wanted to build a residential design home in an R2 area, we permit single-family detached. I thought maybe we should,
Yes, well, for conditional,
I thought maybe at least conditional.
conditional and R2.
Okay. All right. Manufactured housing park, we only have in the MH section. Okay. Group residential. So this is where you have Peachtree type stuff, yes.
What about the one that's up here on, one of the parks, the rehab center?
Oh, it's in commercial.
So
That's a business.
It's not a residential.
yes, it is.
Yes, it is, but
That's the
But
problem,
there
they,
would be
if they're kicking them out in the middle of the night and they're wandering the streets.
It would be a residential use in a commercial area.
So is that,
Yeah, that's one of those things where we're gonna have to
It's covered in commercial.
backtrack into it after we get our, ordinance.
It's not a
in place.
residential,
We'll have to find out exactly what is going on there, and then
Add that in there.
You know,
probably issue them a conditional permit, if it's actually a group residential as opposed to a commercial business, and they're operating in a commercial area, then we'd have to give them a conditional use permit. I don't think there's any way we could shut them down. I don't know that we would need to, if we want to.
So group residential by default, we're saying they don't need to do anything special for a mobile home park, or that's permitted, but it's conditional in R3.
I think it should be conditional also.
Group residential, conditional in the RMH.
Yeah.
Everybody else?
That sounds reasonable.
Conditional, okay. All right, so civic and commercial uses in residential areas, airports,
I don't see anything wrong with the whole page,
okay. Animal care,
Does anybody have any?
I have an exception on teller machines, I think I would say not permitted in R3s.
where were you?
Automatic teller machine,
ATM.
ATMs,
Yeah.
MPs in R3s.
I think it only ought to be a commercial.
You might could put them in RMH is a park, isn't it? Or not?
Yeah, it's a park, but I just had them not permitted anywhere. Okay,
Not permitted anywhere yet.
Commercial.
Okay.
bed and breakfast,
Actually, putting them in a residential area makes them more susceptible to crime, I think.
I changed the NP for the R3. B and B, we've got conditional all the way across in this chart. Cemeteries
Here we go.
in residential areas, I marked mine NP all the way across. So my thought was along his line, if we have a cemetery, it'll be a different zone. It won't be an R type zone. We'll create a zone for city-owned property.
Yeah.
It won't be in an R zone. We might have it next to an R zone, but it won't be in an R zone.
You would zone it particularly.
Government city.
Where we wanted to put it.
Right.
Okay.
It's government city, so not permitted all the way across. Churches. It's okay. Clubs or lodges, not permitted all the way across. College or university. I changed the P in R3 to conditional. I'm thinking, what if someone wants to come in, some small Bible college, and buy the Tom D's property and wants to make that into a college?
Not a bad idea, actually.
Yeah,
Got a nice
kind of
campus.
suits it, they've got
It kind of suits
space,
it, it's right.
but it's R3, so it's not an R1 or 2, so I made that conditional.
That's
in
where our
R3.
schools could go.
Yep,
Gotta buy the land quick before, and then donate it to the city so we
Is
can
it still for
set
sale?
it aside for,
I think it's still for sale.
It was listed, update that it dropped the price on it, I think.
yeah, it's 850,000 now.
Yeah.
So is conditional okay in R3 then?
Yeah.
All right, turn the page. Communication towers.
Oops, I thought you said turn the page.
I'm on top of page 26, communication tower.
How would we not?
I would
Conditional all the way across.
Yeah, I'm just see.
Okay. All right,
Why just pick out the line?
that's fine. Conditional all the way across is fine. Convenience stores, I put not permitted across the board.
What is this area here? Right outside.
Right across the way, it's all zone commercial currently in ISID.
That needs to
We're
be-
gonna decide what we're gonna zone it. Cause it's not being used for any commercial purposes other than rentals.
I don't think it should be permitted any place other than commercial.
Convenience stores we're talking about?
Yeah. That's where we are.
Yeah, that's where I am.
actually, unit 10 is a mixture of residential and commercial zoning.
And unit 3 is also.
Unit 10 was set up as a commercial area originally.
Limited daycare, the way it's charted here is okay.
Yeah.
General daycare, I changed the
Non-permitted.
final into the last one, last column to conditional rather than not permitted.
In the manufactured housing.
Yeah,
R3 is also non-permitted, right?
R3 is conditional.
Why?
Well, I'm just saying that's what's on this chart.
Why? Why would you want a daycare, kind of daycare center in R3 unit?
I was thinking because of the kind of neighborhood it is. It's probably gonna be younger families. So
Yeah, they don't
making
want
it
daycare
conditional
there.
allows them to come to the planning commission and say, can we put a daycare here? Because of the neighborhood, that's all. That's why.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that.
So conditional also in the mobile home park then, right? At least conditional? You okay with that?
Yeah.
All right. Golf courses.
Anywhere.
We're not gonna be building any more golf courses, so it doesn't matter.
Why would people, I would say conditional all the way across.
It doesn't, we're not gonna build another golf.
Well, I know, but we're playing this game, so.
We have golf courses.
You're not gonna,
What about other
you're not gonna permit a golf course in
recreational
an R three.
things? Like tennis courts and parks.
Well, as a golf course, would that include like a,
Are
what do
they
they play
listed?
that,
Oh, we do have parks. and
frisbee
recreation.
golf or whatever it's called?
No, it's a real golf course.
What's a real golf course?
We're talking about here.
Oh,
He's talking about frisbee.
well, they take land and they, set it up like a golf course.
I think a frisbee park would fit under recreational, outdoor recreation. Or park and rec.
It's a moot point, we're not gonna have.
Right.
Well,
I think it's mute.
what are we doing with golf course? Is it conditional all the way across, or
Yeah.
It doesn't
Yeah.
really matter, right?
government services?
What kind of government? Don't wait a minute.
Social security office?
I think it ought to be conditional all the way across. I don't see why not.
Is that the definition?
Government.
It's government services.
Buildings or facilities owned or operated by government entities and providing services for the public, excluding utilities and recreational services. Typical uses include administrative offices of government agencies and utility billing
I think
offices.
There's no
So
reason
this would-
we're gonna
this
have
would be
to
the permission we give to HICID.
residential areas, conditional.
Conditional all the way across
Yeah,
for now?
Yeah, cause you could have, you know,
I mean,
fire departments and,
Yeah. Hospitals. I put not permitted all the way across, and my note was because the roads are an issue. We just don't have roads to
you got
support,
big parking, you got all
Yeah.
kinds of issues.
but not in any residential areas.
Right.
Okay. Libraries, it's okay. Liquor stores, not permitted all the way across. Medical services, I changed the last column to conditional.
I think you, not, maybe, I guess you could put one in there.
I was thinking, it'd be a,
We're medical services, right?
yeah. It'd be like someone's emergency, type, what do we call them? Yeah, the walk-in. Museums, conditional across the board. Nursing homes, Okay.
I'd say R3 conditional, that's okay.
park and rec,
Just like golf.
just like golf,
Yeah.
conditional all the way across.
Yep.
Okay. Post offices,
We ain't never gonna have but one, so I don't see why the hell it makes any difference.
Yeah, I'd say, let's just cover that under commercial plan.
let's make it all not permitted then, okay?
Yeah.
Recreation and entertainment outdoor, not permitted all the way across. General restaurants, not permitted in residential areas. Safety services, safety,
Can we, digress just a minute back to
Sure.
recreation, entertainment, outdoor?
Yeah.
Wouldn't the same premise that you made for the college, somebody wanted to buy that Deeds property and put some kind of, park or, some recreational thing? I mean, being next to the city pools and barn and all that, that wouldn't be that out of place.
well, this outdoor recreation is an establishment offering recreation, entertainment of games of skill, general public, free or charge, wherein any portion of the activity takes place in the open, typically uses archery, batting cages, golf driving ranges, miniature golf. That's what the definition of outdoor recreation entertainment
We
is.
already got most of that recreation, and they got Brown down there, easy.
But you could put conditional under.
We could make it
R3.
conditional in all three rather than not permitted.
Yeah.
Because I'm assuming the D's property would be all surrounded by R1, so we're gonna zone it R1.
Yeah, because it sounds compatible with residential,
Ah,
as long as parking.
We did Parks and Recreation, we did a conditional, so.
Along with golf course, I think if we follow the mindset of golf course, it's all conditional all the way across.
I think we could do the same thing with recreation.
Okay. Safety services,
Fire, police, emergency medical.
Where are we at?
ambulance, yeah. So I made that conditional on my list
Yeah.
in the, R3.
Yeah.
Allow it there, possibly. Schools. Elementary, middle schools, I put conditional clear on the far end in the, mobile home
I
area.
haven't heard anything. Ain't gonna happen.
Short-term rentals, conditional all the way across. Major utilities, I made that conditional all the way across.
Why?
Major utilities,
You talking about telephone poles?
No,
Substations,
utility major, generating plants, switching stations, primary substations, water and wastewater treatment plants, water tanks, radio, television, microwave
Why would
towers.
you
water
make,
tanks.
why would you make that conditional then on R1?
So that they come to us, and where are they gonna plant it? It's not automatically permitted if it's conditional, they have to come to the planning commission.
Okay. Ain't gonna happen anyway.
Is a lift
It's
station
already-
sewage collection?
it's already there. Every
That's
water
major
tower is in a
utility.
residential area,
Stations
so
all over.
we already have it.
Yeah, so it's
That ain't a generating
service.
plant. Alright, go ahead.
Minor utilities, I changed it to conditional all the way across. Minor utilities are services and facilities of agencies that are under public franchise or ownership to provide services are essential to support development and involve only minor structures such as poles and lines. I was thinking of a cable company or a telephone company or something like that, making that conditional all the way across.
There's a lot of that that's used.
Vocational schools, like the schools up above,
Yeah.
what did we say, conditional all the way across? Okay. I added to my list recreational trails, foot and bicycle. As a use. Do we want to permit that or not? I put conditional all the way across for foot and bicycle rec trails.
Sure.
And they also added motorized recreational trails, not permitted all the way across.
Not permitted. We don't want picnics and,
Don't want motorized
ATVs.
vehicles right on our trails.
yeah.
Okay. And then, the manufacturing and extractive uses are all not permitted on this table. Okay, and turn the page to agricultural uses.
There we go.
Oh, here.
Farm animals not permitted anywhere. Crops aren't permitted anywhere to be grown. And agricultural products not permitted to be sold anywhere. And no animal farms anywhere. And finally, hobby chickens. We talked about hobby chickens quite a bit when we were going through the text, and I think this aligns with what we talked about, but
Did we set a limit? How many you could have?
Yeah, that was my question that I had written down here. Do we limit the quantity or the coop structure or having roosters?
We're not talking about John Day.
All the above.
no roosters as I recall, it was only hens.
It
as
needs
I
to be
recall.
written.
Here again, I think that'll be defined in the health or the animals, and I forget what the actual title is, but there's another whole section of the municipal code about
You can deal with it there.
livestock
Damn
and,
pages are numbers, and I can't figure out what.
The definition doesn't have a limit, it just says fowl that are being raised for non-agricultural lots as a hobby instead of a farming operation. Hobby chickens are used for the production of eggs, garden fertilizer, meat production, and as pets on non-commercial purposes.
So would two riding horses be hobby horses?
Please don't add no words.
It doesn't say horses, cotton, hobby.
Is that a joke or is it?
Mine's actually pretty, I mean,
Don't,
sort of
don't,
being
it's too late in the
realistic there, I
afternoon to be
Yeah.
late.
Yeah, you can have hobby horses,
So,
but they have to be affixed to a carousel.
They have to be Shetlands or something.
so on this table, it says R1s and R2s only. For chickens.
But no limit on it.
Well, I don't know about the rest of the text.
Well, the limit might be in the sanitation
Yeah,
type.
Okay.
yeah, we have to be careful
Yeah,
about being
let's keep that in
too
mind.
specific in the zoning ordinances, because, you know, we'll end up, you know, forgetting what we wrote in here and putting something totally different in another,
Yeah.
regulation. In engineering, you call that double dimensioning.
I thought you'd
Where
take
you
the
have-
verbiage in.
Something specified in two places, and you forget that it was in two places, and one gets updated and the other one doesn't.
We eliminated that in our company.
Yeah.
If you have the A drawing, which is the parts, and they have dimensions on, they have a B drawing that has a different dimension that the B drawing controls. So we didn't have double dimensions. Now, in government work, maybe you can't get away with that.
Ken says we all need to be on Prevagen anymore.
Won't forget. Okay, let's look at commercial uses.
One, on agriculture,
Yeah,
crop, what's the definition of that?
Row crops.
I understand, but can a person not in his backyard
yeah, it's fine.
have two rows of corn, not corn, or cucumbers or tomatoes?
Oh, sure.
Well, that's
Could
my
be under
agriculture.
agriculture crop,
That's not
yeah.
I think there's a difference between a garden and a
Okay.
crop.
Agricultural crop, the use of the land for the purpose of growing plants, crops, trees, and others agricultural or forestry products.
For sale.
It doesn't say, it says growing plants, so it doesn't
We talked
exclude
about it.
tomatoes.
That's what?
It does not exclude tomatoes.
We're
My
not
next
talk-
door neighbor has a huge garden, it could be considered a crop.
That's not a crop,
Why not?
as I said it wasn't.
Well, then we need to make it conditional in some areas then.
Yeah, that should be specified because especially now people are
Oh,
wanting to
yeah.
grow their own food.
Oh, yeah.
That
And
needs to be-
some people have their whole front yard as a flower garden. They might want a butterfly garden.
The crop could be flowers.
Well, we still got.
What if those flowers turned into tomatoes?
That's right.
It wasn't my fault.
I think we need to make that conditional.
Well,
No.
maybe it's the agricultural uses. We don't have a definition of
Actually,
that.
it's almost an accessory use of the property, isn't it? It's not the primary use.
I don't-
Primary use is residential
I
living.
don't think anybody's gonna, we're talking about farms, we're not talking about gardens.
And these are primary use.
By the definition he read, but he's not just
I think
talking
we're
about farms.
About,
It didn't limit it
Right.
to size or anything.
You know, it just says, one sentence, the use of any land for the purpose of growing plants, crops, trees, and other agricultural or forestry products.
Well, I'm growing a whole bunch of oak trees, so I guess
Can I move to Wes's chair?
An accessory use is one that is customarily an incidental, appropriate, and subordinate to the primary use of the land. So, we're talking about an agricultural use being a primary.
in other words, if you bought a lot out here and
Yeah.
just to put a crop on it,
Okay.
I think that's
Which-
separate.
Interestingly enough, I had a property owner call me this morning and say, you know, he happened to live he's a mainlander, not an island dweller. And he asked if Holiday Island ever considered having community gardens. Did the city ever consider buying up some of these vacant lots and making community gardens? And I said, well, we already have one down by the rec center. he said, where's the rec center, because he never goes down to the island. And, but then, you know, we talked some more, and he said, well, what if, because we talked about the covenants and stuff, and I said, you can't, so he said, well, what if I buy the lot next door to me and just use the whole thing for a garden? And, you know, I said, well, you can't put a structure on it because, you know, that you can't have a structure on property that doesn't have a single family residence, and, you know, it gets to be a fine line of what's a structure and what's not a structure. Somebody has to figure that out. And, you know, so we kind of left it again, like I said before, where, you know, it might not be against the covenants, but you'd be public enemy number one in your neighborhood if you, you know, put in a garden and then put PVC posts all over the place and drape it with plastic and
With
have,
street frontage.
you know, have a poor man's greenhouse in your front yard, and consequently in everybody else's front yard. So,
Evidently, he's not dragging the
Although that was done
garden around.
on
there.
Holiday Island Drive, near the four-way stop.
And our time
Next
the
door
garden.
to Chris Flanagan's old house, he put in a garden next door, on the lot next to him. He was growing stuff, I think he had chickens.
You could
there
say
for a while.
agricultural crop excluding gardens.
So I think it's been done.
yeah, but it's probably been in violation of the covenant, or maybe not. I don't know.
Who knows?
I don't know.
A suggestion was made, we expand the crop agricultural to include a definition of size. Should we say less than or greater than some size? Just to, so we can allow the tomato patch, or the petunia patch, or the rose patch.
Like on the lot, you buy the lot next door and
Yeah.
put it on there somehow, but you have to screen it from the street or something like that.
I don't know.
I'm
I
wondering
planted 30
if,
pounds of wildflower
Actually, you
seed.
have to put up a fence if you're gonna grow tomatoes, because they're gonna be eaten by the deer and everything else.
well, that's a comment I made too. I said, you know, that the covenants prohibit fences in your front yard, so you can't fence in your garden. Well, that kind of rules out, you know, then you're not really putting in a garden, you're putting in a deer buffet. So, but getting back to the subject here, rather than trying to define what's agricultural, maybe we just want to put a sentence in there that says something to the effect that agricultural does not include a typical home garden for your own consumption,
Yeah,
or something
it's
like that.
fairly generic. A little wiggle in there.
Hobby garden
Hobby garden.
for personal use.
How about a grocery garden?
Because I don't think, you know,
Yeah,
I
hobby
don't,
rather than commercial.
You had to be,
Yeah.
you had to be
Not going
alive
to sell
during World
commercial.
War II to understand that.
I know.
For personal consumption. Okay, I'll add that to the definition. Okay. All right, we're on page 29, commercial districts. Got lots of markups on mine.
So we're going to the,
We're on 20.
are we gonna go right into?
Mr. Mayor, may we take a 5-minute break?
yes.
Oh, come on. I'm on a roll.
What was it I was supposed to follow up on that I forgot?
Are we going to, can't we limit the age of manufactured housing units?
Oh. No.
And our discussion went to, someone's gonna bring something in, their building inspector's gonna see, is it habitable? Just like a single family home, is it habitable?
I can't believe you hadn't passed out yet.
There's probably still a pretty wide gap between habitable and desirable.
Right.
No, actually, it's very interesting because coming from California, where you just do this whole thing with the chickens, like, oh, okay, well, hobby chickens are okay. in California, it's like months of huge meetings and people arguing, and it's in the paper because this city allows chickens and that city doesn't. And my neighbor across the street has chickens, but the city has now said you can't have them, and so we're trying to, trying to help him hide his chickens, but the guy next door would want to turn him in for the chickens. I mean, it's a huge, huge thing, because of chickens,
Yeah.
hobby chickens.
The city I was on the council in Oklahoma, we went to
I think we're just
six
having
chickens.
Yeah.
I hate chickens. My daughter's got chickens and I'd like to get rid of all of them. Now she wanted for her birthday, she wants a
Yeah,
peacock. I
but
said,
they get,
"What?
no restrictions.
And, you know,
Yeah, peacock.
They make a lot of noise, that might make the neighbors upset.
I just
Oh,
tell
she
people
lives
I
on-
have,
she
I have
she doesn't have
PTSD,
neighbors.
these are my companion chickens.
She doesn't have neighbors where she lives.
We, on that thing about livestock, was potbelly pigs in there?
No,
We need to, cause that was recently a big controversy in Eureka Springs, that they
September,
made this lady get rid of her pigs.
we are on Table Rock. Okay, we're,
that was in our, discussion of,
the Johnson's house.
The city too long the last couple of days.
That's the U-shaped driveway
Okay.
on the lower side.
Are we on mute?
We're gonna have to.
No, we're
still recording.
Yep.
And,
it's,
we're talking sanitation of that house in the one. We've seen it, it's CPC.
Oh, yes.
That's got to go cleaned up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I live down on 96.
Yeah, I think he just moved. People across the street. But yeah, he was talking about buying a lot between us. And using it as a driveway.
So he's gonna have to, if he does that, he's gonna have to come forward with the planning commission to get a permit to do that.
Yeah.
Nice to have you at the meeting.
Well, thank you.
You wanna be on the planning commission? Cause there's gonna come a point in time when the city council is not gonna wanna be the planning commission anymore.
We're only doing it kind of out of necessity.
Well, that and a compelling need
That's the necessity.
to do things our way. Make sure we get it set up the
Correctly.
first time, the way we want it, the way
Correctly
we
and legally.
envisioned it.
So does this map show me which properties are R1, R2? In other words, I'm sure that on Table Rock, we're all R1, right?
Yeah.
But what about that little section, kind of like a Y shape right below?
Somebody go right outside.
Jerry's out there on the porch.
The only way you'll know what it's zoned right now is to look in the unit covenants. Each unit covenant says what that unit is zoned,
Okay.
and it could be, there could be more than one zoning designation for a particular unit. Like there's some units here that say the whole unit is R1 except these lots. These lots are C1 or something like that.
The biggest problem we got is this area right out here, when the original developer came in, this was supposed to be the commercial.
Yeah.
And they got all kinds of, they're all zone commercial, and there's all kinds of 30-foot lots out there, 30 and 50, and not big enough to build anything on.
They were thinking strip mall,
yeah.
and they put a strip mall all along Woodsdale
Yeah.
with
Yes.
30-foot businesses.
Never happened.
Never happened. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm more concerned about the lots that are right behind us that are not developed yet. We're trying
Where
to see
you
if we can, we're on 19 Table Rock, so that little kind of orange Y thing is right below me. And trying to find out who owns the 2 lots right below us, but we'd like to buy those so that we wouldn't have to worry about,
What, I make.
yeah.
So,
So we're at 19, we're 19 table lot right there.
okay,
Yeah, so we're looking at.
now this is lot
these
19, not necessarily
Oh, okay.
street address
two. Okay,
19.
street address, yeah,
They're
our
different.
address is probably up around here somewhere, because we're pretty close to state line.
Yeah, she's pretty close to Twin Peaks.
And you're wondering who owns what?
The parcels below us,
Right here,
yeah.
that's all high Sid green space.
I know High Sid green space backs up to me on my lot.
That'll never be developed.
Yeah, okay. All right, so I'd have to take a look and see where it's exactly.
You can see that on the plat map.
Yeah,
If you
Okay.
find a flat map.
Pull up the plat map off of the High Sid website.
ISID website.
Or the city website.
Or we have it on the city website. now.
On the city website, on the
Okay.
planning commission's tab, there's a documents webpage, and there are reference documents below that. So I created a table to get you to any unit, map, or plot that you have available.
And you can pull up the covenant too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cold in here,
The
bud.
covenant is there,
Good,
What?
good, I wanna see that.
they're side by side on the table.
There's cold in here.
So it's the planning commission webpage, below that, the
Probably not
documents
gonna give
page.
us any heat.
The bottom half of that is the reference documents.
It's actually easier to use than what's the way on the High Sid website.
I think so.
Right, before I forget, before we reconvene here, just a couple updates. I did find the listing that Doug Taylor was talking about on the planning commission computer of every unit lot, every lot definition, and what the corresponding street address
And
is.
then we can plug that into our, this other table we're doing.
It's like everything else here, it's about 80%, maybe 70%, clear and concise, but there's lots of places on the table where it says, used to be unit, this, lot this, or, lot this, and this, where it was replotted over time. And there are no street addresses in those chunks, those areas where it's been replotted. And, it's done several times in there since, and it goes all the way back to MCO. I think MCO was, McCulloch, assigned all the street addresses initially.
Yeah.
So any kind of replotting, has been done.
So who came, I sent you that email, I said, who came up with the addresses for these, residential bills that were done in 2020, 2019, 2018?
On those parcels?
Uh-huh.
I guess, probably Terry Presley.
He said,
'Cause
okay,
they're,
this is the number on this edge, and this is the number on that edge. so on.
It's like 1A, 1B, and 1C.
He did that on Fairway,
Yeah.
That's the only one I know of that's like that. I mean,
Well,
most of them had
But it's not,
16,
it's not the
18,
first time it's
20.
been done on that street though, because the houses on the other side of that street are 1A and 1B. So, and that was done 20 years ago probably. So,
From what I read in other communities, it's, there's a 911 coordinator in these cities, and they work with the postal service and 911 to come up with the address. And then that information communicated to the county.
and, there was no 911 probably when this was done initially, and I was told by somebody that was probably told by somebody that was told by somebody that back when all these addresses were assigned, the post office wouldn't do it, so the developer did it. Which is probably true. I mean,
I also,
thousands of lots, I can imagine the post office wouldn't wanna take that on.
Okay.
But it all ties directly into what we're doing here, that when you you start out with no master plan, then people do what is convenient, given the situation, whether it, you know, conforms to any other convention or not.
Shall we reconvene, Mayor?
Yep.
Okay, we're on, top,
Reconvening, I didn't gavel us into recess, so.
we're on page 29, and the, commercial zones and these uses. We start with residential uses, single family detached.
Permitted only in C one. Sounds good.
Only there?
Why would you want, why do we want to allow
Looks like it.
residential in a commercial zone?
Yeah, I think that was a big mistake. That was, we'll see long term if it ends up being a mistake, but the, kind of the reverse logic that's been used in the past, that commercial doesn't prohibit, you know, residential, is why we end up with, you know, a house in the middle of a commercial district, or a rental unit in the middle of a commercial district.
Has Robert Evans, sought a building permit for what he has planned?
What?
Robert Evans talked numerous times about converting one of those strips into.
He's never talked to me about it, or the planning commission, or,
He's probably not going to, he probably didn't do it.
Well, that's what I was thinking.
well, if he does, he'll get a stop order, a stop work order.
Single, so what do we?
I think it should at best be conditional all the way across, if not.
Not permitted, I don't, you know,
I put not permitted from C3 forward.
all the way across.
Well,
Now that-
Is this C one and C twos down here, or is it one or the other? Down here on Woodsdale versus
It's-
the park?
It's C.
it's likely
C1.
C1, likely.
Those I
I
said,
thought we weren't
classification
doing-
of C2.
I didn't think.
They
we
have a
were-
C2.
Yeah.
In
we do
unit,
have C2.
It's either unit 10, I think it's unit 10.
Why, I thought
Well,
we
that
were,
would be down here,
I thought we were laying this
So all
out
these
for
would be
going
C2.
forward, not
I
for trying to.
believe so.
and the park would be C one, is that kind of what we're planning?
Huh?
We can't fix anything, it's done.
I'm just curious.
I think from in the research I did from the covenants, all the C1s will probably stay C1s. There are C2s that are described differently, and so they kind of fell into, one of them would be the C3.
That's our new one, it's not. that's
Yeah,
not
it's
what I
our-
said.
And
That's right, it's our C3, and that had to do with, because of the hotel.
Yeah, you know, rezone it, as long as they really put lots in it.
The motel.
They won't-
I'm thinking single family detached should not be prohibited, should not be allowed in, commercial.
I don't,
I think it should be,
We can start with that.
I mean,
Get it all the way
we're
across.
talking about going forward, we're not
Yeah.
talking about correcting.
yeah,
Okay.
All these single family that we have down here in the C two area, they would be like
Non-conforming.
non-conforming
yeah,
existing.
they'd have a, you know,
So if they're non-conforming and a tornado takes off the roof and a couple of walls, they can't make them back to what they were. They have to be what they're zoned at.
They have to be businesses.
Have to turn into commercials.
That's gonna be.
I think
That's
That's
what our- that's what this-
swallow for a single family
think-
home.
or get a variance.
I think duplexes.
No, they can't have, well, the variance would have to be against our regulations. Our regulation says if the property is destroyed, you can't make it back, you can't build it back to non-conforming.
I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Duplex is the same.
Duplexes then, the same?
I would think so, I don't know what, you know.
Duplex, yeah, I would say would be the same.
How about loft living space? Someone wants to create a living space above their business.
In the olden days, you know, that people had apartments up above their businesses, but this.
Pretty common in Eureka Springs.
Yeah, Eureka Springs, Hot Springs, Central Avenue.
Most old cities.
Huh?
Most old cities.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We just don't have too many two-story.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, how about condominiums? Probably not permitted because of the residential conversation we had. Oh, loft is permitted the way it's charted, is that okay?
Ah,
For for loft living, the way it's charted,
Yeah, I don't.
everywhere commercial except nothing in industrials.
So you changed the single family and duplex to NP all across?
Yeah. So same thing with condo in town,
Mhm,
NP all the way,
mhm.
okay? Same thing with triplex quads,
I think
all the way
so.
across, multifamily all the way across, not permitted.
Now,
Now, I added a group called group residential.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, cause I was gonna say that, something like, Green Acres here, not, or Prestige now, Prestige and Peachtree, you know, facility like that would be okay in a commercial area.
Should we say condition?
Conditional in all the Cs. Group residential,
Yeah,
not permitted in
Well, we
industrial.
have the group residential already up in the park. I mean,
and
the drug place.
Okay, so we'll add
I
that
think that-
category.
I think that's gonna fall into a different category. I don't think that's, I don't know how group residential that is, as opposed to just our sleepover.
Okay, so airports, airstrips. Okay, the way it's charted.
Yeah.
Animal care. General, I changed my conditional for C4 to permitted.
Okay, I got it.
Animal care general, that's a,
Fresh my memory.
that's a veterinarian that has outdoor for his horses and whatever, his kennels.
So what would a dog groomer be, man?
Dog groomer is a service, that'd be a retail service, that's, that would be down under, probably retail service. Dog groomer would be my guess.
Is that animal care limited?
Animal care general. I just made it C4, I made it permitted in C4, so conditional's fine, but
I'd make it conditional in all of the commercials.
all the way across.
Yeah,
I don't.
Animal care general?
Yeah.
That's for the bigger vet, isn't it? That's allowing the stable in the back for the cows and horses.
Well, it just says boarding, it allows boarding.
C1, if you remember, is supposed to be residential designed places, so it looks like a house. By definition of C1.
I think you got C2.
then NP is correct.
Okay. So, the C4 area is okay at, conditional.
Mhm.
Animal care limited, that's, the smaller vets. Auditoriums or stadiums,
And so you can, it ain't gonna happen, so.
ATMs in any of the commercial areas and industrial areas,
Yeah,
That's
banks and institutions.
yeah,
So it's conditional in a neighborhood type commerce, but everywhere else is okay. Bars and lounges, we talked about taking bars totally off our charts altogether, so I just changed it to NP.
NP, yeah.
Bed and breakfast, I made it all conditional except of the industrial.
And a bar was something that just served alcohol with.
That's what we
hardly any
determined,
food.
no food, just liquor. And not just beer, but hard liquor. Bed and breakfast, conditional all the way across except for industrial.
Mhm.
Car washes, I didn't see a problem with them being
I don't see a
in C4.
problem.
Yeah, that's okay.
P and C4 then. Cemeteries, I changed mine not permitted in neighborhoods, C1,
Yeah, C1 is.
commercial neighborhoods. C1, a neighborhood. The district is intended to be embedded in and serve the residential neighborhoods, such as home offices, childcare, small retail, service-type businesses that do not disrupt the normal and orderly development of the surrounding area. Buildings are to be of residential character regarding outward appearance. That's our C1. So we go on cemetery and C1s?
No.
Not permitted.
How about C2s? That has to do with a little bit bigger businesses with drive-throughs, and it's a medium density area.
I just don't see a cemetery unless you're talking about a mortuary
Yeah.
for
You want a
cremings.
cemetery in a rural setting of sorts. You don't want it in a commercial park.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
So should we say not permitted all the way across, because our anticipation would be a city-owned zone?
Mhm.
Oh, only put it in the city-owned stuff?
Yeah, we'd create a zone for city. If we started that way, or
Yeah,
not permitted
that's the
all the
only
way
way you're
across.
gonna have cemetery.
Okay. Churches, all the way across permitted.
Mhm.
Put a college and then anywhere except for C1s. What did we say in residential for colleges? You said not permitted in residential, okay, all right. Communication towers, I think matches everything we've done. Question?
Well, we said a college or a school might be appropriate for a parcel down on island.
And we marked it conditional for R3, for college and university, in residential.
So,
But school
a
School had
School
conditionals,
could go in a commercial area also.
yeah.
Or it could go on government.
Interesting,
The
school
private
isn't,
school.
school isn't listed here.
You can get a private school.
Yes, it is, okay. On the next page.
So I would do college, university, and school all the same. How we do it.
Well, lift your page and we've got, it shows conditional and except for industrial area, the school or elementary, it's marked permitted in light industrial, but every place else is conditional.
We use that
So-
for the college also?
It's fine with me. College, university match what we have for school. So it's 3 C's, a P, and a C. C, 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 P. What? Oh, that's residential.
NP.
And then not permitted.
Yes.
College, university, so we've got in the C1, 2, and 3 is conditional. Permitted in C4, not permitted in industrial. Okay. Construction, sales, or service, we're talking about lumber yards. And electrical pipe fitters and plumbing stores.
Sounds like
Good,
C3.
Keep them C3 and 4s, okay. Convenience stores, not in our commercial neighborhoods, but everywhere else, okay.
Mhm.
Daycare in the family home. Commercial business of daycare.
Well, if we're gonna have a family home, it's not gonna be in any of these Cs, is it? Because there's no single family detached.
That's true. So not permitted anywhere.
Right.
You'd be limited to daycare general.
Mhm.
Okay. So I mark mine in neighborhood C1 as conditional for daycare general. Everything else.
I would say
permitted.
NP in the industrial.
NP in the industrial.
Yeah. Doesn't sound appropriate for the industrial.
Okay.
No, there are manufacturing plants that run their own daycare.
Tyson does.
Yeah.
Over in Green Forest.
So,
Conditional.
that would be an accessory use to the main facility.
It's got a conditional on it, so you could, that would
It
work.
would be a part of their main facility, it would be a separate business.
would be on their land, but it would be, yeah, it'd be part of their business, but still.
I mean, we're talking about zoning a separate piece of property owned by somebody different, aren't we?
I guess.
So conditional would at least bring it to the planning commission.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, industrial areas are conditional then. Adult entertainment. We have pretty strict rules in our text, so I just made the C4 conditional. Funeral homes. I made it conditional in our C1
I
and
think it'd be
permitted everywhere else.
non-permitted in C1.
Not permitted in C1 for funeral home.
We're gonna have adult entertainment conditional? Is that what you said?
That's what's the rest of the way across, not permitted in 1 and 2.
Do we want
But the
any adult
conditions-
entertainment?
The conditions in our text are very restrictive. That we decided probably enough restriction in the, you have to look in additional uses section. I think it's, used to be 120.
Well, reading of this definition, I don't think we want it anywhere.
I'd want one next door. Since I'm an adult.
Let's see if I can find it. Let's go there, adult. Find next.
And while we're worrying about golf courses anyway.
Adult entertainment is 14.16.02. We said in that text, the building or housing of adult entertainment shall be located at least 2,640 feet from the following uses: church, library, daycare, elementary, middle, high school, single-family, duplex, or multifamily residential uses. The distance shall be defined by the radius of 2,640 feet measured from the nearest
It's
exterior
a half a
wall.
mile.
Half a mile. Has to be a half a mile or more away from all those uses. Church, library, daycare, elementary, middle, high school,
Why do
single
you
family.
even want it associated with Holiday Island?
Like,
Do we need it?
like I have it just because.
Or you would be inviting it if you say it's permitted?
I don't think there's any.
We don't have to permit it.
Well, no, we don't, but this is my personal belief, I don't think you legislate morality. We've made it very restrictive.
But it's conditional, so
It's
it's not
conditional,
like,
yeah, it may very well.
not like you just
But
automatically.
if you read the conditional section about conditional uses, they're talking about safety and stuff, certainly nothing about morals. I just don't know that we want that image for Holiday Island.
Well, there are probably people that say that we shouldn't have passed the liquor by the drink, or,
This is 40 steps further
well,
down the road than that, let me just say.
It goes on with prohibited activities. An adult entertainment use shall not be conducted in any manner that provides the observation of any material depicting, describing, or relating to specified sexual activities or specified anatomical areas from any public right-of-way. This provision shall apply to any and all displays, decorations, or show windows. The statute, like when we talked about before, I would be embarrassed to read the statute, what it talks about sexual activities. And it's
Pretty explicit.
Yeah, they define it pretty well.
Yeah.
well, then that's why I say make it conditional, because there are some adult entertainment that don't fit that. Like Pat said, I don't think that's anything we have to worry about.
I don't, that's kind of
I don't know.
not gonna be an issue here.
We were by the yacht club, put in a stuff list. call it the knee knockers.
Oh, please.
We are in a public meeting here, and let me remind everyone, we're being
No, just
recorded.
remind him.
Yeah, I was gonna say, there's only one problem.
Don't paint us
All
all
right.
with the same brush.
I don't have a problem
I don't-
with just saying not prohibited. And,
Not
you know,
permitted,
somebody, yeah, not permitted, and somebody, you know, someday somebody may come along and challenge that
Challenge it.
we're infringing on their First Amendment
I don't think
rights
so.
or something, but we'll deal with it if it ever comes up.
I'm okay with not permitted all the way across.
Mhm.
Funeral homes,
You know, they have funeral homes now that look just like a regular house, so I don't know.
I marked it conditional so that we would have
Yeah.
something to say about parking and
Yeah,
setbacks and that kind of
I
stuff.
don't have a problem with it being conditional.
Does that include funeral homes that have their own crematorium?
Mhm.
I thought it should be non-permitted in C1.
Well, a funeral home by definition is not a crematorium.
Yeah,
You know,
Yeah,
crematorium is a crematorium.
I know, all right, do we have a crematorium?
I don't,
In the funeral home definition.
Cause that's fairly common now,
right?
just for funeral homes to have a crematorium.
The one over in Berryville had it. I think that'd be not permitted in C1.
Funeral home's not described, we don't have a definition.
There's no definition for it.
yeah, we might wanna be kind of specific about funeral home.
Want to limit or take out the crematorium aspect, you'd have to put a definition in there.
All right, we'll work on drafting the definition. And should we include crematoria or not?
I say no.
Not including crematoria.
I would make sure you don't get one.
You don't want a crematorium?
I say, you'll make sure you don't get a funeral home if you say that it doesn't include.
So if we define what a funeral home looks like as conditional for our C1s, conditional in C2s. So if they wanna have it next to the department store, they can, and anyplace else.
What are the, like, parking regulations on a C1? I mean,
We haven't defined, we haven't gone into C1 sections in this regulations.
Yeah,
We haven't defined it yet.
we haven't addressed seating. Commercial.
I mean, if we were to get a funeral home, I don't think it'd be a massive one, but some of them are big parking lots.
We might get a branch of Nelson,
Yeah, something like that.
just to make it easier for you to arrange funerals.
If you send it to the church.
But this is not a commercial area that's embedded right in the residential area. It's adjacent to a residential area, right?
C1 is embedded.
C1's pretty much embedded, it's like this right over here, C1.
Says this district is
That's why I
intended to
say
be
come
embedded in residential neighborhoods.
That's why they're
But
supposed to look
it's
like a
not
house.
like,
C2 serves.
it's not like
adjacent-
you're gonna have a house and then a funeral home and then another house. It's gonna be a commercial district with housing around it, is
That's
That's
true.
more
the
C2.
way I envision it.
I know, but it's the way the definitions are, that would be a C2.
Yeah.
Be on the outside of the C1, not embedded within the C1.
Yeah, it says C1 is intended for home, office uses, childcare, small retail, and service type businesses,
Okay, well,
where C2 is limited to.
funeral home is
Not permitted.
not a,
I thought we were there.
C2 is way more, C2 and C3 are.
So not permitted in C1.
And the others are conditional, is that?
Conditional,
What would you say?
C3. Okay, We did golf courses in residential areas. What about commercial areas? C1,
I don't see.
in residential, what do we say? Golf course in C1, we
I can see
had
a top
conditional
golf.
all the way across.
You put a top golf
No.
in the
Not in
commercial area.
C1.
Yeah, don't hold your breath if ever get the.
Golf course can't fit C1 by definition,
Yeah, right.
not permitted there. Okay. Government services, I put conditional on the first two, C1 and 2.
In C2,
Yeah, conditional, not just outright permitted.
And then permitted on the rest of them?
Yeah.
I don't know why it would be. I'm sorry.
Hospital, not permitted in our C1s, but conditional in C2, permitted in the larger commercial areas.
Do we differentiate between hospital and clinic?
There's medical services, right? See, we have a medical services in the residential area,
Yeah, okay.
but we have hospitals listed also, but we don't have medical services listed in the commercial area.
Oh, we need that,
I think so too.
definitely. That's the one we're more likely to get.
Right. So medical services should be permitted where?
Are we, I thought we were.
No, wait a minute.
We have.
You do have medical service unless I'm working from an outdated
On the
sheet.
next page.
Next page.
Oh, I'm, okay.
You skipped over the.
Oh, yeah.
Hotel.
Alphabetical, never mind, I'll draw one.
Right,
Okay, we'll get to it then.
And it looks right.
so I think you're okay the way you have it on there.
Hospital,
For hospital.
conditional for C2.
Excuse me, I have a question about the medical services. Of being, allowing it in residential areas. You need to specify that you're not going to allow the, alcohol rehab in your residential areas.
Actually, we're
Because
doing
that was a
commercial
huge
right now.
problem in California.
Mhm.
That was a huge problem.
We're just talking commercial right now.
Okay.
We didn't put it in the residential, did
No.
we?
Okay,
Yeah,
I thought you
medical
said that it
services
was-
is here, it's
medical
not
services
permitted.
were allowed in residential.
Well, C1 is a sort of a
Transition.
transitional from residential to commercial.
Yeah.
It's very light.
When we were growing up, we used to have
But-
grocery stores.
Starbucks.
That was a serious
I don't
problem
think we had.
in my neighborhood.
Starbucks on the
Yeah,
end
That
of
they
the
were
street.
putting those rehab.
I always think of
homes
the mom and
in
pop
our
grocery store.
neighborhood.
You're
Yeah.
talking about a
Kid.
rehab.
You don't have
Yeah,
any.
where you have someone living,
Yeah, so you
Next
need to
door.
be careful with that because it can be
Yeah.
a serious problem.
that's an interesting,
Well, medical services we have not permitted in R1 or 2, conditional in R3 and
Okay.
R4, the locals.
No.
All right, back to commercial then.
Hotel, are we on hotel?
Yeah.
motel?
I have not permitted, the way it's chartered, I just changed the C4 to permitted,
C4 is permitted.
Mhm.
if they want to build them there. Libraries, wherever, I
also,
don't know.
just to point out to your question, medical service is, the definition restricts it to an outpatient basis, so nobody living there.
I would say you wouldn't want a library in
Probably not industrial.
L&M.
Don't need libraries in the industrial area, okay. Liquor stores,
Yeah, you need one of those in the industrial area.
no, they're not. But what about the C3?
C2 and C3 is the only place I
Yeah,
think.
C3.
Permitted in C3? Okay, that's what I had marked.
If we ever get the license for one.
Medical office, a medical service or office, it says conditional in C1 and permitted everywhere else.
I don't see a problem with that. I don't know whether you, I don't know if you'd want them in the L&M though, but you know.
Well, in the industrial area where I used to work, there was a medical service office right in the middle of it, so we handled industrial accidents like 6 blocks away.
We got safe working habits.
All right,
You work for the government, nobody worked hard enough to get hurt.
museums,
Fell asleep, fell out of their chair.
way it's chartered, okay, for museums?
Yeah.
Yeah, nursing homes. I made my C2 conditional rather than just permitted.
Okay.
C1 is conditional.
Yeah. Office space, small offices, all the way across the board, wherever we want to do it. General office, not permitted in our small neighborhood commercials, but
2 and 3.
permitted 2 and 3, conditional in the larger areas.
That's good.
Commercial parking lots. Okay,
It looks good.
park and rec. Okay, pawn shops.
Why would they be in an industrial area?
Conditional.
Well, I don't know why it is. That's the way it was on here, and it's conditional.
Yeah.
There's a pawn shop right next to the Tyson plant in Bearville.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
But the pawn shop was there first.
Okay.
Probably so.
Post office. Okay, the way it's charted.
That's good.
Why isn't it on government?
Well, that's a good question. We ought to move those to government.
It's the
So
same
do
way in
zone.
retail, I mean, not retail, but residential. It was not listed as,
Oh, it was in the residential too, doesn't it?
So because we created the GC, the government commercial, which is maybe not permitted here in all these Cs. I think that's a good idea.
well, what if they wanna, post office wants to locate an industrial,
We're gonna have to create a zone for them. There is a zone created, we just have to designate what zone that would be. Have to rezone something to the government.
okay,
Makes
Parcel.
sense, that sounds like the way to do it.
Yeah. Okay. It's a recreational entertainment indoor.
Interesting, you can do that.
And the outdoor activities. They just put some more restrictions on the C4 area. Fast food restaurants.
Could you have a outdoor recreation in C1? That's conditional, that's
It's
right.
conditional. Fast food restaurants, not permitted in our small commercials, but conditional in the C2s, permitted in C3, and conditional everywhere else. The way it's charted.
Why would you? That's conditional, okay.
So I just, on restaurant general, I made C2 conditional like the restaurant fast food. I recommend it. Rather than just outright permitted, make it conditional. Okay. Small retail, so under 5,500 square feet. I made conditional in C1 areas. Everything else I left alone.
what would a car dealer be?
It would probably be bigger than 10,000 square feet.
5,500 square feet's not very big.
No, it's not.
That's pretty small.
Small retail.
Yeah.
So I made it conditional in a C1.
Yeah.
Just so we'd have some say in what's going in there, rather than just outright permitted.
And the 10,000 one I'd say is not permitted in C1. That's a pretty good size building.
Okay. And then the greater than, so then the first two, they're not permitted. So C2 is not permitted for greater than 10,000 square feet.
Are you talking about the building size or the business size?
They have to
Building.
be
I'm
limited.
guessing it'd be the building. It doesn't say that. I'm guessing the building. Because the parking lot for a retail gets bigger and bigger as the building gets bigger, typically.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about
I was thinking like what Jerry said with the car lots, you know,
Right,
the sales office may be, you know, half the size of this room.
that's
The
true.
parking lot is 5 acres.
So maybe we should change it to conditional rather than just outright permitted for the 10,000, up to 10?
Yeah, there's little risk in making it conditional.
Okay. So then greater than 10,000, I have NP, and then make it C, conditional for C3,
Yeah,
okay? Puts a little more restriction on it. Safety services permitted across the board,
That's been fire and police.
yeah. In commercial areas, okay. Schools in commercial areas, not permitted in our C1. Difficult to make a school look like a house. Conditional in C2,
It should be CCCP, NP. That's what we have for college.
okay. NP, C, C, and then C4 was what?
Well,
For elementary?
for college, we had CCCP, NP.
Okay. So P's on there, fine.
now, what about a Montessori school
That would,
in C1?
I don't know what that is, I'm sorry.
so it's a preschool.
Yeah, it's a specific
It's a teaching method.
Teaching.
franchised
They have one that you
preschool
read.
curriculum,
Oh, okay.
but Montessori schools are almost always in residential areas or very close to
Well, we would say C in C1.
them. Yeah,
And we did
that's
have
what I
it
was,
in our, we did
that's
have
what
it
I
in
would do.
the R's too.
How do you spell that, Dan?
MONTESSOR.
Mhm.
School.
They also, my daughter went to, Montessori, preschool through 3rd grade, but then we put her in the public schools, but it went to the 6th grade.
Yeah.
Which made,
And that's why I think conditional is probably a good designation if it's going to be bigger than just a, you know, kind of a normal house structure with something, or create a big traffic problem or something like that.
you know, where my daughter went was that actually they took over not an abandoned, but a church moved and sold them, church building.
The preschools, you know, daycares and preschools, you kind of want to have close to where people live or work, so that they don't have to drive 5 miles out of their way to drop the kids off at daycare.
So are you suggesting C 1, 2, and 3 are conditional and not permitted beyond that?
Well, we had daycare, we had not
I think
permitted
they're
that.
all permitted everywhere except the
Except industrial?
industrial.
Conditional then or permitted, is outright
We
permitted?
have it ruled out for residential, R1, R2, R3. It's not permitted,
Okay. But in a commercial C1, we okay?
because it's close to residential and
You want,
it's meant
direct
to
what?
serve residential area.
You want P, you don't have to ask for any permission.
Yeah.
That sounds
Okay.
good, that
All right.
sounds good.
Okay, we'll add that category.
So are you making that a separate one?
Yeah, I'll make a school, comma, Montessori, so it's clear what kind
Well,
of
I
school
don't,
it is.
I don't think you should limit it.
No, there are other type of.
You can say pre-K, if that's what you're talking
Preschool.
about.
Yeah,
Oh, okay, rather than, this is elementary, middle, and high, we'll have a pre-K?
Yeah.
Well, but just Montessori specifically can go, I mean, there may be places where they can go
They-
graduate. from.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
cross the line between pre-K and,
Montessori is just it's a franchised method of teaching.
Okay,
It's not specifically targeted towards any age group.
actually, you have a similar situation with Chris Springs in Greer. It's a unique teaching method that doesn't conform to public education at all.
and so how do they
And they go
get,
from pre-K
I
to,
think it's preschool.
they go from pre-K through high school.
so how do they meet the Arkansas standards of education for kids? they don't teach algebra, calculus,
It's not
chemistry,
in,
physics.
it's not in how to teach it, it's what they end up learning.
Okay, so they just take proficiency tests, and prove that they learned it, okay.
State testing?
It'll be just like homeschooling.
Okay, so what do we call it then?
We just leave it what you got.
Montessori schools.
You don't even have to specify Montessori, just make it any school.
Put a pre-K before elementary and you're fine.
Insert pre-K in front of elementary.
And then I think you've got it covered.
That covers, I mean, it doesn't have to be
Pre-K.
public. it
Because
can
it
be
is a
private.
school.
Okay, so what I marked on here was NPCC. We change that to PPPP, NPNP. You want elementary, preschools, middles, and high schools in all these zones?
Sure.
Okay,
As permitted,
as permitted?
it's fine with me.
Thought we were gonna use it, see,
If you don't allow them in the residential and you don't allow them in the commercial, where are they gonna be?
You don't want it out in the industrial park.
Okay, service stations.
the only thing I saw on the back, why is it not permitted in C4?
C4 commercial trades, that's the big warehouse storage operations, and sometimes has storefronts, including lumber stores, plumbing, electrical supply, vehicle service and repair. So we do spell it out in C4, that's where they're supposed to be.
Yeah,
So we need to fix that.
permitted there.
Make that permitted. C4, service stations?
Why not?
P, there it is, okay, I was looking at the wrong column. Got it. Short-term rentals in commercial areas. Conditional all the way across the board in residential areas, I believe.
So you don't want them to build a Motel 6 up in the park? Is that what you're telling us, Dan?
That's,
Short-term rental is not a motel, I don't think it is.
Yeah.
Short-term, they're defined differently.
we don't have hotels,
There's a
we have motel and
short
motel
term,
already on here.
short term's a residential thing, and so
Okay, I need to read the definition.
I think it ought to be NP all the way across.
There's nothing defined, short term just says a period of time. Doesn't.
Yeah, but it's residential.
Yeah, I would say,
You're right.
You already have bed and breakfast on there, and you already have hotels and motels on there. That might be I'm not sure we need that category.
Well, if we put NP all the way across, don't make any difference.
Yeah, I think you're right, I don't think we need the category, we got everything else. Well, you're talking about short term in residence,
It's a resident, yeah.
a residence.
Yeah,
There's
there's a whole chain called Residence
living
Hotel with
facility
many
that houses
suites
people on a
that people
rental
rent.
basis.
Well, we already
for
did
less than
hotel.
30 days.
That's what I mean.
What did
So
we
why
put
do need
down
that
for
at
bed and
all?
breakfast?
Why do we need that category?
I haven't been changing it.
Bed and breakfast, we went conditional, except for the last column, industrial, we left it NP.
Well, I don't know how bed and breakfast and short-term rental can be different.
A bed and breakfast has the resident lives in the house and they just rent out a room or space. Where a B&B, an Airbnb, or vacation rentals by owner, the resident owner
Just put it
isn't
in
there.
all the way across.
I would, I'd put NP all the way across on that.
In short-term rentals,
Yes.
so you're, okay, I'm gonna go back
Yeah,
to,
Either that or take it out.
I agree, given the differentiation between bed and breakfast and short-term rental, I can agree to make that NP all the way across.
so we're only gonna allow when we work on short-term rentals in residential areas, period. Conditionally in residential, not in commercial areas.
Except for hotels and motels.
Yeah.
And that's
Because
already in.
short-term rental
I think that makes
is a
sense.
resident,
NP.
not
Because
putting
we've
residence in.
we've already determined under residential uses that we're not allowing single family detached places. We're not,
We already did
it's
that.
conditional on duplexes. Condominiums, townhomes, triplexes, quadplexes, and multifamily units are not gonna be permitted in any of these commercial areas.
Right. So what would somebody build to use as a
You have to
short-term rental.
build
anyway.
a purpose-specific hotel or motel.
Mhm. All righty,
All right. Storage, outdoor yard storage, outdoor storage.
That's like that thing that.
In commercial
Dean's
areas.
Got over the bridge down there, right?
these are like storage units
Yeah.
and or open yard storage,
Yeah, like boat to storage.
Ah, that kind of
units.
storage, okay.
but this includes storage units, right?
Doesn't
You
say.
might wanna make two lines for this, one for the outdoor yard storage and the other for the
Storage units.
container.
I think we need to add storage units.
Yeah.
Okay, let's address
I
this
think
one.
they're different.
Outdoor storage yards, we're gonna permit them.
Uh,
I have not permitted up through the C4, C1, 2, and 3 not permitted, is what I marked.
I agree.
Okay, so outdoor storage units, and outdoor, it's called storage units. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Probably not gonna allow them in areas smaller than C3. Only in
Now you're
C4
talking
industrial
little
storage
buildings.
units.
This is just
Half
the
time's
buildings.
over.
Yeah,
3, 4, 5.
and we're trying to finish this up, we're almost there.
I'd go not permitted in C1 and 2 and probably okay in the rest of them.
All right, I'm okay with that.
See, 1 and 2.
Not permitted, and the rest are permitted.
Wait a minute, so we created one for storage units?
Yeah,
What's the difference in where it says residential mini self-storage? Isn't that a storage unit?
where do you read that?
Very last one.
Very last one.
Oh, it's not alphabetical? Oh, there it is.
Warehouse residential.
I didn't
That's what we're looking
spell
for.
it,
That's what we're trying to add, so we don't need to add what we call this.
No.
No?
That's a warehouse.
Warehouse, mini residential storage, if you know, they build these big buildings now that are all storage units on the inside.
Yeah.
okay.
That's not what we're talking about here.
Okay, we
There's
have,
one of those right on this end of Rogers, when you first get into Rogers on this end now, they built this huge building that's,
The
that's storage.
definition,
Why does
the
it say,
definition is an
why does it say
enclosed storage
residential
facility.
mini then?
See, that's confusing.
Yeah.
That's, to me, you're talking about storage units, residential.
Once you're inside the building, it's full of mini storage.
Yeah, but why
Units.
warehouse residential mini? That don't make, anyway.
it's because they're really small. The one where my daughter put all their household goods when they were moving,
It's like
you go
these
in,
down
there's
here.
sliding doors, you walked in, you took a cart, you walked down the aisle, and you found your cubicle where they had their stuff piled. It was an indoor warehouse.
My daughter lives in Denver and got one like that, and the advantage to them is they're climate controlled.
Right.
Yeah. Leave your TV in there, whatever.
Some of them are. The one that we stored all of our stuff in Memphis until, while we were living in Europe, and we got everything out of storage. Anything that was made of rubber was melted.
So yeah, the warehouse one is a separate.
Yeah. So storage units, I marked NP, the rest of them P? Yeah. For storage units, okay. All right, major utility. I put not permitted in C2, conditional the rest of them.
Yeah.
Minor utility, I put conditional in C1.
Probably.
They would make the thing look like a house, they can. The rest of them on that list, I didn't change any for vehicle. Vocational school at the bottom, any discussion? Think of, the tech school or whatever. Okay, turning the page. first three down to basic industry, I left all unchanged. Anybody else have any changes?
We're talking about asphalt and auto wrecking.
Industrial, manufacturing, and extractive uses in commercial zones.
Yeah, we really wanted an IL and IM, I'm sure, don't we?
Yeah.
In our, at some point, did we, I think I remember us discussing it, or talking about the salvage yards and auto wrecking yards having screens and things.
That's a state law.
That's a state law.
Do we need one here?
Is what needed.
Well, it's only, in this list, it's conditional in the IM.
Three. Oh, is it further down?
It's industrial manufacturing. Right here, right there.
Oh, here, the wrecking and salvage yard, right here.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what I was looking for, okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
the biggest eyesore in all of northwest Arkansas is that one outside of Berryville where you can, I mean, they
Yeah.
but
And the one down 23, if you understand.
Yeah, it's not, it's smaller, but it's not.
Yeah.
They did clean it up.
It is cleaned up, yeah.
We can't do anything about that unless we annex
So
it.
why is freight terminal a C under C3?
Well, UPS and FedEx can put in freight terminals. It's a building with big trailers and semis that pull up to it.
Okay.
It could also be
Because it's
a rail,
also where you go to do your UX.
but you can, they usually have a door you can walk in.
Yeah,
I just changed my C4 to conditional
that sounds.
in freight terminals, C4 conditional.
Okay.
I didn't make any changes to manufacturing. The mining and quarrying, I put not permitted all the way across. Soil, I left the way it was. Research services, I put not permitted in C2.
Under soil borrowing, you might say what soil?
Yeah, I know,
We don't have any soil for anyone to borrow.
It's the same as a quarry.
rocks.
pretty much.
Borrow.
Research services, C2, I put not permitted.
Research services, not.
Yeah. Conditional in the others. Just move it up the grade a little bit. Primary warehousing, I didn't change anything. Ancillary warehousing, I put not permitted in C3. Make it the bigger places, C4 and up.
Up on the park, next to the gun range, what is that big warehouse?
An abomination.
I mean,
I don't know what they're gonna do with that. I don't know what it's for.
I mean, where would that be in storage or warehousing or what?
Is there
Well,
another building up
They'd
there?
have to tell us what the use of that metal building's for.
Well, it shouldn't be there, but
It's right next to the gun, what used to be the pavilion, which is
Yeah.
now the gun range. There's a gigantic storage, metal storage building with a garage door.
Haven't been up there enough to see.
It's a metal building, but I don't know what it's being used for. It's whatever they would apply to.
I've never been by there that it's open, so, I mean,
Right.
I don't know. I asked Doug about it, he said that's commercial, you can put anything you want there.
When I heard that it was being built, it was for the barrel furniture business that's not in Holiday Island now. That's what I heard it was being built for.
I heard the guys.
So light manufacturing.
in there or something. It's a mess.
If you look at Data Scout, it looks like the lot line between two units runs right through the middle of the building. Now, Data Scout isn't necessarily that accurate, but it'd have to be off by 100 feet to be not running through the middle of the building. So I don't know what's going on up there. But Brad Hanley owns the gun range and somebody else owns the unit next to it. And part of that building, at least in Data Scout, well, the building is in both units according to Data Scout. I don't know what's going on up there.
Yeah, the sooner we get this done, the better.
I just made warehousing not permitted in C1, 2, and 3 for all three of them, or the welding shop, I guess, too.
And the ancillary, not permitted in 3.
That's what I did. Welding and machine shops, I put not, leave that out for C4 and industrial, that's what I recommended. industrial uses. Any changes there?
Nope.
I put not permitted, to sell potatoes and whatever in C1. Product sales.
That's agricultural property,
Yeah.
farmer's market,
Farmers markets,
not.
not permitted in C1. That was
That
my
was
suggestion.
conditional, isn't it?
Conditional.
Yeah, that's the one that's supposed to look like a house and stuff.
Yeah,
They do a farmer's market up there at the info center, they have done in the past.
Well, I think this is permanent structure
A
farmer's
permanent
market.
structure,
yeah.
okay. Not to say you.
Like
Setting up a tent in the parking lot.
Like the one coming into Rogers.
Okay, no rules
Yeah.
against setting up something in your parking lot.
Mhm.
Yeah, I guess. I left the animal farm and hobby chickens alone.
Are we gonna give the C1 permit or NP?
Well, we have hobby chickens permitted in a lot of residential areas, so I thought the C1s, if they can have it in a residential area around C1s, the C1 would probably be okay.
You're not gonna be able to have a single family.
But you don't have,
Well, that's true.
you don't have residences in C1, do you?
That's right, we don't. NP then, C1. Okay, so I'm not permitted anywhere.
Hot damn.
We're done with the list.
Hallelujah.
I'll draft all my notes into the next document.
Good job, Lynn.
That's all I have.
I still think that, I still like that.
All right, well.
We gotta go to the next meeting.
Meetings.
Lynn was under the impression he was retired.
All right, public comment? Any public comments?
The public, what the public.
We ran them off.
We're not soliciting on Zoom.
Yeah, they're not
Next-
getting Zoom comments.
Our next meeting is gonna be our regular meeting.
Yes.
Second Tuesday?
Eighth of February.
Second Tuesday, February 8th.
At 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock?
Better mark my calendar. Where is it?
Are we gonna have any more special meetings this month, you think?
We got that workshop, the city council.
I meant for planning commission. now.
Planning. Are we done with? How close are we being done with this?
Well,
Yeah, we're
my
ready.
comments are, I have to obviously put in these changes today. But we need to get the map drawn, however, whatever method we're gonna have. We have to get the table associated with it created. And then I have to do, the tables that should be pretty quick about the setbacks and what have you for each unit, because they are so varied in the covenants. What other exceptions might need to be on that table, so I've got some table work to do to create, and, the map. The map's my biggest concern.
Yeah, did you
What it's gonna
decide
look
how
like.
to do it?
All I have for software for a map is the 2012 version of Holiday Island's plot map.
We had talked at the last meeting, and I was listening to the end of the meeting again,
Or could we get
yesterday,
GIS?
that we were gonna ask Craft and Toll if they had a map of the plat.
Dan had that on his list.
It's on my to-do list, but the more I get into it, the less confident I am that it would be worth anything. Because, first of all, I'm sure it's not up to date. It doesn't include the Terry Presley plotting and stuff like that, I'm quite sure of that. And secondly, if we have it, then, and it's gonna be worth anything to us going forward, we're gonna have to be able to keep it up to date.
You know,
And I can do that if it's in the right file format. I mean, the
I'm
software
just
I'm
not-
using can do it, somebody can do it.
I'm not sure that that's something the city wants to take on
Okay,
forever. And that's why, you were checking with other cities as to whether or not they maintain a current plot map, and most of them no.
when I was out, I go out to data scout a lot myself too. And like you were mentioning before, you can see, particular areas and how they're plotted, you can see the boundary lines as best they are. GIS is bound to be provided to the counties. Because it comes up on the Act Data Scout, it's bound to be updated regularly through some process.
GIS doesn't
Maybe there's something they can do, but I asked the GIS for a lot map of Holiday Island, and it was just like, the data on there was, like, she couldn't remove stuff enough so I could use it. The labels and, I mean, there was all kinds of information on there that I'm sure they probably maintain it, but I don't think it was useful for us. Maybe I can go another go at them.
You know, when you look at when you blow up the Act Data Scout map on your PC, yeah, at first it just shows boundaries. When you move it up a little higher, you can get the
Names.
owner. You can blow it up a little bit more, you can get a lot number, I believe.
Even the address.
The address,
The address is on there too.
the address is on there, I don't know that I've ever seen a lot number.
Yeah, on mine, at
Other
least my
than,
plot, it is a lot number. It
On the
says-
map or on the column on the
No, it's
side?
on the map, it's a different color. They put
Yeah,
it's
it looks
not
like
right on the
that.
house, they put the address on a button right on your house, and then right next to it is the lot number. I think it's in red, the version I see.
I'll have to look at that again.
Because I've seen the numbers come up when you look at several in a row,
Yeah,
and they look like there's a lot.
lot numbers are there.
Because when
Anyway, they bound to have that, available, and it would seem like they could remove a class of data, that, you know,
A layer of
a
data.
layer of data by itself.
I can give it another go to see what GIS can provide us. But I asked for that way back in, January, or no.
I'm still,
November.
We talking about what we see when we pull up Act Data Scout. See if you can get it.
I'm still
Forgot how long it was back
questioning whether or not
North Carolina.
maintaining a plot map is
You heard
something
that?
the city wants to get.
That's
into.
why
If we get it from them,
That's
we
why I
aren't
forgot about
maintaining
this
it,
meeting,
we can
because I
pull a
didn't
new version
plan on
anytime we
being
want.
here today.
Okay, so you're talking about getting the next level of contract with Data Scout to where we can get the same information the county gets and
Something
everything
like that.
Yeah, it was-
Or
was
or
worse.
we,
That's why my wife
I don't know,
flunked
maybe we contract with
The
that.
COVID test when we were there.
That's what
They
That's
have
what
it.
happened. We had to take a
It's
COVID
there.
test before we got on a plane to go to City
How we
I
use
think-
it, I don't know.
I think the best way for the city to have
Drove all the way
an
back here and I said,
plotting
well, we better
map
get
is
tested
to
again.
make
We
sure
both went over and both
that the
both
county
tested
gets
negative.
all of
Just
the
yesterday.
replots.
So it was
If
maybe
somebody
just- I
comes
don't
to the
know.
planning
Neither
commission
one
and
of us had
says,
symptom
I wanna
one.
replot this parcel, make darn sure the county gets that, because that's been a problem in the
The
past.
doctor said,
And then,
on the
from that point on, the county will get the
instantaneous thing,
information to
we had to
Data
go to a
Scout.
regular lab,
Exactly.
which is supposed to
It's
be
all
more
there for
reliable.
us to use.
But
Um,
it still happens.
No, we couldn't possibly maintain it, we don't have software to do such a thing.
Fortunately, believe it or not, the airline gave us
And
vouchers for
I
the
talked to
plane
Lynn
tickets,
about, initially, I think it was my idea to just have a plot map like this
No, we
of
weren't
Holiday
there.
Island. And then have a table of all the lots and what each lot is zoned,
So,
and then they can find their lot, find their
But even
spot.
that, we
but
can't
still,
maintain, it's
I mean,
nineteen
it cost us
twenty
$240
twelve.
for the damn
And I'm-
COVID
I'm-
test that we were on. And then
Because of the dilemma of maintaining an up-to-date
4 days of
plot
riding.
map like that, I kind of changed my mind
Yeah, I
now,
was-
where I think
right
maybe
now, I
what
was
we need
planning
to
on
do
having
is
a
just color
Killer on the
code,
beach.
areas to what they are
Why not
primarily
be
zoned
here?
as. And then have a table of exceptions.
I told Kevin, my buddy down in St. John, we're not going
Or
to this,
no
so.
plat map.
Anyway, that's what has to be done before we can adopt this as a code, as an ordinance.
But we still need to find out what other cities are doing, or how they're getting around it.
Well, that's the problem. The Eureka Springs and the Berryville people say, we don't maintain it,
No, we
our zoning
do.
map. They're not even, they gave it up. They did it in 2015 and have not updated it.
Which
Well,
means,
how'd they do it in 2015?
They paid, the people at Urban, whatever, the Jim Bun, whatever, from, Little Rock to draw them a map.
Thousands of dollars, no doubt.
They paid for it.
I would think.
And from what I've read, it looks like the people at Rogers and, or further, they have engineering firms that do it, they're paying them fees to do it.
Yeah, if we could afford it, if we could afford it, I would love to get the whole plotting maps and mapping thing and everything set up with ESI, the engineering firm that HICID uses, because they're so good to work with. And, I mean, they made the city map for us.
Well, we could get a map like this one over here, about this size, and we could all get down on the floor, and we could be color coding it with the colored pencils and stuff.
I thought we,
I'm a free spirit, I can't color within the lines.
I can't get down on the floor, so.
I can't get back up off the floor.
I can get down.
It took Linda and I
And gravity will help you get
2.5
back.
hours to go through that map with colored pencils for what I could get out of the covenants. And there are areas I still haven't marked because it's not clear in the covenants.
But didn't we talk the last time that you said something about just, we had some map, we're gonna list all the addresses. So is that not still the plan?
And we're gonna have a table that accompanies this map that we're trying to come up with.
Yeah.
And the table will have the unit block lots and the addresses.
If
why do we
come
need
up
both?
with a way of maintaining a current plot map, that's my concern.
Well, I mean, that's,
Why do we need both?
Both what, Ken?
A map and a table?
Because the statute requires it.
Well, does the statute say what the map looks like, actually?
No, it says a map and
Then we just put a
I'll read it to you.
generic plat map out there with no,
The
nothing
statute,
on it.
the statute anticipates that, planning is going to be done up front, so that this is your industrial park, this is where all the people live, this is where all the stores are.
Yeah.
So you have 3 colors
Uh-huh.
on your whole city. That's not what we have here. We have,
most cities do.
Mixture of
we
it.
have all kinds of,
but if you list the, lots and addresses or whatever and have a, just whatever map we can come up with and just do colored, line the boundaries of zones.
Yeah, why don't we just do the unit boundaries?
Yes,
The strictly unit boundaries accompanied by a table of unit block lots. How about that?
I thought that's what we talked about
That'd
in
be
one of the
easy.
meetings.
And then
That's what I've started with. And then Unit 3 and Unit 10 that have commercials in them, probably want to go ahead and mark those out. Because we created commercial zones for those zones.
I don't know.
Well, if they're easy enough to,
Did a lot of
They're-
work, a lot of CAD.
They're defined by unit block or lot.
I mean, well, we could have a plat map with street boundaries
Data into
on it,
table.
so you could kind of identify sections maybe.
I mean, we don't have the software, the finances to do other than what we're just talking about.
If the file is in an SVG format, I can manage it with the software that I loaded. I paid
SVG.
Well, if these other options.
something
are
vector
hit by
graphics,
what's not
standard
there,
vector
then
graphics.
That's what I
It's
think.
the same
Well,
software,
maybe
the same
we
format
stand
that
that
these plastic cutters, Chris cutters, whatever they're called, they use the same file format. And I've got an SVG of it. I have it. Street map.
Well, we wouldn't need one big map either, we could just do the unit maps maybe.
Well, with the software, I'm drawing each unit as a layer, so you can print one layer at a time, one unit at a time. You can turn it on and off, whatever you want, so the map can be whatever you want once you get it built.
So you already have the
I started
units
on it.
in your software?
I've started the map, and I have the layers named, I have the units named already.
Oh,
If I don't stand up, I'm gonna be stuck here.
I mean, I can work see how it turns
Does
out.
it have
yeah.
streets on it? Streets
Yes,
on it?
I think it does.
That's all we need.
I don't
I
know.
don't think we're building the Taj Mahal here.
All right, well,
And-
Move to adjourn.
We did adjourn, didn't we?
No.
no, we
Oh,
didn't adjourn
oh,
yet.
okay. I make a move, we adjourn.
You have to make a
A
motion.
motion.
If you have to make a move.
I made a move earlier today, I make a
Do I have a
motion. we-
second?
I'll second that.
To adjourn?
Say all in favor.
I made a move, I stood up.
You just